Beltramini?
Here.
Councilwoman Broomfield?
Here.
Councilman Eisenbacher? Councilman Fleming?
Here.
Councilman Howard?
Here.
Councilwoman Kerwin?
Here. Quorum present. Now we have a resolution that public comments will come before we have our discussion. So we're going to open for, and the mic there, is it on? Okay, and we ask if you're making a public comment that you give us your name and then your brief comment. So is there anyone that is here that wishes to make a comment? Come, sir. Come up and give us your name. Yes, you. I don't know your name, I say your name.
Jack Witt.
Okay. You want us to move it up for you?
Great, thanks. Good evening. Just have a couple brief comments, and I appear here this evening as a resident of Troy. And however, I want to briefly comment on my background, my experience in connection with my comments. And that background includes actually right at 30 years of experience in labor relations, employment law, and human resource management. The first 25 years of that period was with large corporations, actually starting with Ford Motor Company, and then near the end of that period, actually right here in Troy with Kmart Corporation, where I was Director of Labor and Employee Relations. About 5 years ago, I moved into the public sector, the wonderful public sector, and became Human Resources Director for Genesee County. And while Genesee County is a little bit bigger than Troy, it's still I think Troy's a substantial entity within the public sector. And currently, I'm Vice President for Human Resources at Macomb Community College. So in a sense, I'm still in the public sector. But it's interesting from my perspective, looking at some of the differences between the public sector and I'll call it the corporate sector, and particularly at Genesee County, not so much at Macomb Community College. But I found in many cases when the decision makers, in the case of Genesee County, that was the commissioners, but here, of course, this body largely, in terms of decision makers, whether you call them politicians, policymakers, decision makers, those who are moving the entity forward or attempting to. When it comes to HR issues, sometimes I found a lot of what I considered inadequacies in a lot of the processes and decision making. And one of those that I found in many cases, not always, but in many cases, was an inability to move forward with decisions, especially with key decisions. Obviously, some decisions can be put off. Doesn't suggest a lack of efficiency or effectiveness. But in fact, in many cases, if you compare it to corporate entities, inability to move forward with efficiency and effectiveness on key decisions. And this brings me really to the focus of my comments this evening. I've heard in the last couple of days of the possibility that this body will not go forward this evening or in the near term with a decision within the context of the search process, the recruitment and selection that's ongoing right now. And I think that would be unfortunate. In that regard, I've also heard that there's a possibility that a decision will be made, but not from among those that were in the process itself, and that also, I think, would be unfortunate. I think as a resident, I know the city's probably spent tens of thousands of dollars in this process, and I think it's expected on the part of the residents, the citizens and residents, that this body's going to make an appropriate decision after that time and delay and cost expenditure. So I think, as a resident primarily, but also bringing some focus from the standpoint of my experience, I really would like to say, the decision makers, the policy leaders in my town, my city, can make decisions that are appropriate. The other final point I'll make is with respect to the candidates, and this is something I've seen in the public and private sectors. There's a kind of implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing in employment. I'm not here to lecture from a legal perspective, but that kind of implied covenant's there, and I think it would certainly be unfair to those who have been involved in the process not to go forward in connection with the process in terms of making a decision. And in addition, in the public sector only, it becomes even more problematic for those individuals. I faced this myself, quite frankly, when I accepted the job of Human Resources Director at Genesee County. Everything goes into the public sphere, goes into public media, and it's certainly unfair, it seems to me, for those individuals who have exposed themselves potentially as candidates to their current employers to not go forward with the process as it was contemplated. So I think it's very important to think about that. As I say, I'm very proud of Troy. We've really enjoyed it here for now more than 9 years. I always brag about being from Troy, so I'd like to think that this group of policymakers, decision makers can go forward in a responsible manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to make a public comment? Mary Ann Bernardi?
I'll just make this brief. I was very impressed by Mr. Payne. You know, some of the comments that he made at the community.
Go ahead.
What? Oh.
Use the mic, though.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I know, we have mics here, but
Okay.
it's fine.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
You know, in the community meeting, Mr. Payne made some comments that I thought were very refreshing to hear. One of them, one of the strongest, was that he likes people. He likes people, and he said it. And I was thrilled to hear that, because not many people say that, because I don't think everyone feels that way. But I think his statement was genuine. I watched him after the meeting, mingling with people, and he seemed very, very comfortable with people. He didn't seem uptight or nervous or shy, or, you know, he just felt that he was right at home, meeting people that he didn't even know. So I like that a great deal about him. And I think that we could really use somebody like that in Troy, somebody who likes to be out in the community and likes people, will be out there and talk with people, and not always be so, I don't know what the word is, but so pressured and you know, but really comfortable and relaxed, and can get the job done in that kind of a tone and that kind of a format. I think that that's something that we could really benefit from. And I know we've had a lot of splits in our on our council and off the council, and there've been we've had many struggles with one another. And you know, actually, even though it hurts at times, that's probably not a bad thing at all, because that's what America's supposed to do. That's what we're supposed to do. That's our job. We're supposed to debate. And I think we do it well in Troy. We don't shirk. But it would be nice to have someone like Mr. Payne who can smooth off and round off the edges, you know, and kind of be a bridge builder between us. And I just really think that a leader at that level needs to have that type of personality. You know, I've always been one to say, don't vote on personality, vote on issues, vote on issues. And that is important. It's probably the most important thing. But I've come to realize in watching the comings and goings in Troy and the politics of Troy, that it is also important to have a certain type of personality. It is important to be a bridge builder. It is important to like people. And when you spot somebody who actually genuinely does like people, then I think we should jump on that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that wants to make a public comment before we begin? Because this is when we're taking the comments before and not at the end of the meeting. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Thank you for your attention and for coming, and for those that are viewing, thank you for viewing. This evening, we are continuing with our executive search process, and we're going to have council deliberation. Mrs. Bloom or Mrs. Sims, do you have anything to tell us before we begin?
I was just going to give a summary and some options, and of course, you know, you all are the clients, so it is at your pleasure, then, you know, I will continue.
Okay? Go
We,
ahead.
okay, we've, again, you know, not to pat ourselves on the back, but everyone in this, you know, has worked very hard to get 90-day process done in a much shorter period of time. We've had a lot of things to review. You've had a lot of things to provide input on, and the candidates have risen to the occasion. You have 5 candidates who are very complimentary of the process, of the opportunity, and felt that they were treated well and fairly throughout. You've gotten a chance to see their writings, to get some critiques on them, as well as references. You've heard presentations and gotten feedback on their presentations. And at this point, in situations in which there is not a public process, you know, I typically will facilitate a discussion of pros and cons on each of the candidates. To continue to keep candidates treated fairly and humanely, you know, I recommend, you know, suggest that we poll your entities and, you know, you as a group, and see who your first and second choices are as city manager candidates. Even though we love to have, you know, one dream candidate, because I've been in this business for quite a while, it's always nice to have a number 2 in case negotiations do not work out with number 1. If there is another idea, that would be fine too. Or if you have any questions on any of the materials. You know, Councilwoman Kerwin asked me before the meeting started about the confirmation of the degree for Pam Antle, and that was confirmed. I was not as concerned about it as sometimes, because, well, the reason I'm saying it is because her master's was confirmed, her undergrad was pending. So usually if the master's is confirmed, usually the other one comes through fairly quickly also. So I didn't print that piece of paper because I think that we have killed enough trees in this process, but even we do have that in our files.
The other times where we have done a search and or an appointment of a city manager, we usually go around the table and people express their opinions about, you know, certain people. We talk about pros and cons, and so we usually have a, you know, a general discussion. So I think that probably
Still
you
take
know,
place. Okay.
take place, you know, unless people want to do something differently. I don't know. That's usually, people usually mention someone and then say why they think they'd be a good candidate or whatever. Councilwoman Beltrame?
I liked what Mrs. Sims said about her facilitating a pros and cons discussion about each candidate. I think that vets each of them fairly, and we can take the opportunity to look at the qualities we wanted from the profile as we do that. And that way, quite honestly, Madam Mayor, you aren't trying to facilitate it and participate.
Right. Okay. It's fine. David?
I agree we need to have some discussion, but I'm very concerned, since this is a very public thing,
Yes,
this meeting,
right.
I'm concerned about bringing up the cons. I'd prefer to keep it positive, just because, I mean, some of these people are, I mean, to put it very bluntly and frankly, they're risking their job by looking at another job while they're currently employed. That's my only caveat on publicly saying all the cons.
Of course, the thing is, they know
Yeah.
that when they apply, you know, and I don't think that's any surprise to anyone. And the procedure's been, you know, very clear. We have all of our data.
Just wanted
Councilwoman Kerwin?
to respond to that, because when we look in the background of those who are holding jobs right now, actually everybody who was asked who's involved with their work, very complimentary, and said, you know, it's an opportunity for growth. I'll also say when, you know, I served on the board at Troy Schools, many of the wonderful Troy School employees in central office frequently looked for jobs elsewhere as a superintendent. And they were never threatened or worried that, oh my gosh, retaliation will be. I'm surprised that that's an attitude, or that we would consider that an attitude, even for our own employees seeking elsewhere. Sometimes it's for growth or for an opportunity, and it was never deemed that way. And since we have that right in here, where their colleagues are saying, you know, good, go. In fact, we're very complimentary in what they said. I think it would be important to see, as you suggested, how they measure up with what we set as our standards, and then speak to what areas we might want to pursue.
And yes, I think that it's important that we look at the candidates based on the standards that we've set. And the standards that we all came upon and sent out there, you know, they're out on the resume and, you know, out everywhere. Because that is the standard by which you make your decision. And so I think that's an important thing. Do you wish, yes, Councilman Fleming?
I think all 5 candidates met the standard, or they wouldn't have been reduced from the list of approximately 47, I believe. And I am not comfortable saying anything negative about any of these candidates. I think they're all excellent. I think it's personal opinion as to who we like the best. I had the type candidate, our candidates I wanted, and expressed that. They were delivered. I think they give us a book of their life here, and all the references and so forth. But I am not comfortable saying anything negative at this point about any of the candidates. I think they all met the criteria. I think it comes down to a personal preference and what we feel as individuals on the council would best meet the city's needs. So we can debate whatever, but I am going to do my best not to be negative with any of these people, because, like it or not, there may be things that would be shared tonight, personal opinions, that could reflect on them negatively. And 4 of them are local people. Some of them have full-time jobs in like positions, and I don't want to do anything. I respect them enough that I don't want to do anything that would even remotely or be perceived as being harmful in any way.
Are you suggesting that we not then talk about the pros and cons as Andrew suggested?
I'm suggesting we do not go around the table listing pros and cons of the individual candidates.
I'd like to hear from Councilman Broomfield and Councilman Mayor for Tom Howard, how they feel with how we should proceed. Before we proceed, we should probably hear from everybody.
I think that we can all be respectful as we have a discussion. I think we can talk about the pros and why we like one candidate over the other in terms of personal opinions and a good fit for Troy. I don't know that I'm comfortable in saying, well, this person doesn't have this, they don't have this degree, or they don't have this, and therefore I'm not interested in it. I think you can make it very positive without being negative. You can say, well, I think this person has got all these qualities, but I'm not comfortable with them, and then let it go.
Martin, you want to weigh in on our procedure?
Yes, well, you know, I don't think that we'll have any difficulty coming to a decision without listing cons. And, you know, I just generally don't think it serves any purpose to list the cons. And not only that, but, you know, what may be a major con for one member of this board, the city council, may not be a major con or even a con at all for somebody else. And what it comes down to, and, you know, interviewing, to me, I find it to be a very perplexing process, only because, you know, you grab different groups, you grab different individuals, and you come up with different results. And what's good for one group is not good for another group. And people that were turned down by one committee or board or city council, whatever the position would be, are wholeheartedly embraced by another. So it's a matter of, you know, values and relative importance of different things. You know, some people value the the interview greatly. Other people see it as a piece of a process. Some people don't value it at all. So I think what it's going to come down to is, each of us has a vision for the city and sees the needs for a particular city manager, and we're all going to probably be weighing these candidates against those criteria. And it's probably, I wouldn't be surprised if we have 7 different opinions. I would be surprised if we didn't, that are very unique. But I'm sure that at the end of the day, we'll be able to find some common ground, and I'll be able to support the candidate. So that's how I feel.
Okay, so I think what we're going to do is talk about the pros of each of the individuals then. And
Probably the standards first that were set, because they were made, the candidate profile was made
Yes.
through consensus.
right,
So maybe we could refer to that, and for those who didn't bring this binder, I don't know, just read it.
The highlights of the candidate profile are that the ideal person should have demonstrated strong leadership and managerial experience, thorough knowledges of the principles and practice of local government administration, and be an excellent communicator with strong managerial and financial skills, and display a passion for serving people. Enthusiastic team builders, ability to work with department heads, city officials, and community folks for positive community outcomes. They need to be able to draw consensus from divergent opinions, use an interest-based and entrepreneurial spirit in his or her approach to solving problems, be ethical, honest, open, accessible, comfortable interacting with council, staff, and citizens, and trustworthy, sensitive to social issues, and embrace diversity. They should be politically astute, be able to translate policy from the council into strategic and tactical work plans, able to motivate a workforce to achieve excellence, and deal with restrictive budgetary conditions and declining revenues. Those are the highlights from the profile. Person's going to be expected to use the Troy Futures Vision 2020 plan, the master plan, and the team to achieve the results and show leadership in doing so. The preferred education was a bachelor's degree in public administration, business, finance. A master's is preferable, and the person is supposed to have at least 15 years of experience, senior management experience. It would be, it's helpful, preferred that they have municipal government experience, but it was very clear that nonprofit or private sector experience was also going to be an attractive feature. Are there any other points that you want to highlight?
I think under leadership, missed the entire last sentence. It says the successful candidate must.
Oh, working effectively with public officials, staff, labor organizations, boards, commissions, and citizens, and again, to be able to achieve positive outcomes. A lot of times you can have, challenges, but again, we want to make sure that the person has shown success in getting to the end game.
okay? Now, how would you like to proceed? In the same order of interviews, in alphabetical order, in reverse alphabetical order? What is your pleasure?
If we're using the book is in alphabetical order, and that might just be easier for this.
That's fine.
Oh, interview order, okay. Oh, that's right, I'm sorry, I'm looking at my book, not yours, apologize.
I've got
Payne.
both of them here.
No, that's all right. Jim Payne.
Interview order.
Okay, Jim Payne. Mayor, okay, I was going to say, I didn't know which order you wanted to do.
You want somebody to start the phone discussion?
Pardon?
You want somebody to start the
Yes,
discussion?
please.
He's got 30 years of experience and all the appropriate academic and professional measures met. But the other thing is, as Mrs. Bernardi said, he does do a good conversational engagement one-on-one with private citizens. And also he believes in consistency, which means a lot to me.
Anyone else? Council members? Councilman Eisenbacher?
This seems almost like a matrix to me, where we have 5 candidates and 15 qualities. Just put X's in all the boxes that they have, and you look at a picture. You want to put it up on the board?
No, I don't think it's necessary. No, I'd rather have us have a discussion, because we do our best. You know, we sit around, we've all said that. We sit around the
Okay.
table and discuss, we usually do our best results.
Yeah, in terms of Jim Payne, I thought his very diverse background was good with the different states and the different cities he's been in. His experience is very good. His graphic profile matched the qualities of a council member. I mean,
City
it's
manager.
it's been a long week, yes. I know. Of course, city manager, and impressive. And he has roots in the area.
Councilwoman Broomfield?
He struck me as very professional, just the way he presented himself and spoke and carried himself, and just altogether professional demeanor.
He was a quiet speaker, but thoughtful, always thinking before answering. I had some comments about that, which I thought was appropriate for thinking things through. And occasionally could joke about a couple of things, you know, when things came up, which I think was always a refreshing quality when someone's in an interview situation. He also had some thoughtful questions of us, and both in his presentation to the public and the staff and in a general statement to us at the end, I thought he seemed like he thought things through, but yet wasn't too rehearsed with it, you know, just a nice balance. Councilman Fleming?
Obviously, he's very experienced, having 30 years in the profession. It seemed like a person who would not get rattled very easily, very even keeled. Takes everything in stride. I don't know how easy he would be to get excited, but he's been through a lot in the past year, and he seems to have weathered the storm quite well. And I think he would like to finish his career in the city and bring some stability. He's a very level-headed, very thoughtful person.
Member Tim Howard, or who else hasn't had an opportunity Guess you're the only one.
Mary.
Oh, Mary?
Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, you made a comment about one, you said something about the grade or something.
I'll defer to Mary at this point.
That's all right, I'll defer back to you.
Okay, I can find something good to say about all of these candidates, and I thought we had a good group of candidates. So, Mr. Payne, I think the reason why he is quiet is because of his temperament. I do think that he is excited to be a city manager and really enjoys what he does, and that's probably why he's done it so long too. I think one of the things that struck me as something that he would be able to do was to bring different disparate groups of individuals together and mediate or conciliate, if you will. He seems to me, based on his background and his answers and what he's written and what he said to us, that he would be a hard worker. And I think that he will appreciate what we have here in Troy as well. He's not going to be making changes right off the bat. He's going to learn. He's going to learn his city and learn the process. And I think he's going to roll up his sleeves. I think he'll do a pretty good job.
Councilwoman Kerwin?
I think that we really are beneficiaries of a number of different elements. We started out with the big black binder. We moved then to the smaller white piece with additional information. We've received emails from residents, or soon-to-be resident. We have, as you pointed out, Councilmember Eisenbacher, the graphic profiles, which we just received, which more reading. We have comments from members of staff, from citizens who attended recently, and from tonight. And I think what's so interesting about all of that is that there are whole bunches of different perceptions of the same thing. So like our second speaker tonight, I was very impressed by Jim Payne's presentation. He simply got up, spoke without looking at notes. I thought connected well, did have that passion, spoke with how much he enjoyed things, spoke endearingly about the reasons that he wanted to move back to Michigan. And one couldn't help but be touched by that. His qualifications are clearly there. He's worked in a number of different places and would bring a different viewpoint that we currently wouldn't have from just a parochial candidate because of one working in a number of different things. Appreciates the work, I think. Is very, very even-keeled. And that's shown on the graphic profile, too.
Okay, we need to move to the next individual then? That's,
I have some other things.
oh yes, go ahead.
I just didn't want to steal them.
Go ahead. No,
And I'll tell you, he said a few things that showed me an understanding that I thought was applicable in our situation. That business retention is one of the foundational elements of true economic development. I mean, I thought that was key given the business community we have here in Kennet. That he had solved problems and policy issues in other places he had been through civic engagement methodology. And as you know, that's one of my hot buttons, and he would have had no reason to know that. So I was impressed with that. The funding of some of the larger projects he had to do in cities where he had been before came not from the communities, but came from outside sources and state sources, and he was able to broker those partnerships. So I think that as we talk about these candidates, kind of all of that goes into the mix. and he does believe in mentoring and moving younger professionals through the system, which I believe that each of us has an obligation to mentor ourselves out of a job, so that meets my values.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, we'll go to Pamela Ansdell. Next. Councilman Fleming?
I was impressed with her energy and excitement about the job. Obviously, very knowledgeable, Troy, about serving in neighboring cities. But I was just impressed that she brought some excitement and energy to the interview process. She's obviously well qualified as well. But she had more energy than some of the others. And so it just exuded. I like that.
Pamela was a very articulate speaker in answering all the questions and in her presentations. She did have a sense of optimism and enthusiasm, which she believes in trying to inspire others to have that. At least that's what it says in her written material and in others speaking about her too. She also likes the fact of building a team to do things together, which I think is a good approach, and to show those leadership qualities and expect that others would show those leadership qualities also. She's had some diverse background experiences as far as job experiences. And she gave very complete answers to all the questions. I'll leave something for somebody else to say. Councilman Eisenbacher?
Yeah, one thing that did impress me is she did have that private sector experience and the diversity of the different cities she's been to. She's had that experience.
Councilman Greenfield?
Coming from my background, I appreciated her relational side of her when we talked about issues. You know, she had struggles with some of the her staff or even with council. You know, it was, I would want to go and sit down and talk to them. What am I doing wrong? What are you expecting that I'm missing? Very relational, and you know, I think that's a key to many problem-solving abilities is to be able to connect with other people and really get down, and that's a quality. I don't think that's a skill. I think that's innate. And it seemed it was with her.
Martin or Mary? Representative Howard or Councilwoman Sherley? Okay.
Well, let's see here. No, I guess the thing that, and this didn't even necessarily come out in the process, but, you know, she's part of a new regime, if you will, nobody. And, you know, they're making some much-needed changes. And, you know, the thing that she mentioned is really a sensitivity to the needs of businesses and residences in Novi. And she referenced the speeding up of the building approval process. And, you know, that's something that doesn't necessarily cost money or much money, but can have an impact on economic retention, even and economic development. I think, Mayor, you mentioned also, and I would agree, that she has a good diversity of background, you know, with the management consulting. So mostly in the private sector with management consulting, but she's also been at a California city, which I can imagine has got to be an eye-opener. And but she has some regional diversification, and Ann Arbor too is a lot different than Troy. And over in Ann Arbor, I think that was a very valuable experience because she got to do a little bit of a lot of different things. And I think she's got a good grasp of the financial elements and of course she's well versed in the problems that Southeast Michigan faces. So that's what I would say about her.
I noticed that on the graphic profile itself that she ranks high in the positives and also in outgoing. And we had talked about as a council a desired attribute would be someone who, as Christina pointed out, is relational, would go out into the community, engage in a way that we haven't seen for a while. And she certainly was able to do that. She certainly was good on follow-up. I suppose it was at the public meeting where something was mentioned about documents, and then sure enough, the next day here she comes with something for each of us. She was the only one to quickly write a thank you note. I don't know if you were able to check your email, but there was the thank you note, and it incorporated more. So that follow-through is there, and that comes because of the ability to listen. You know, listening to what people are talking. It's not a conversation that's just going in and out. So I thought all of that was. We also have the information, as I mentioned, from our residents and staff. Certainly that weighs in, and her presentation both to public and to staff went over very well, actually seemed to rank the highest. And we've received emails also suggesting that she seems to be an appealing choice for those who've been watching this.
Anyone else, or anyone want to say something that they missed out on? Okay, the next individual is John Gaber. He also was articulate, very verbal, but mentioned about how it's important for a city manager to listen. He talked about accountability quite a bit, and how that was an important thing to him, and that's important in the whole area with staff members and with himself and with others. He talked about some economic development and neighborhood stabilization funding, and also about building codes and that process. Let me see what else. He also talked about the deputy treasurer, some of the things that he did. He had kind of an unusual background, a variety, which, you know, we had asked for as one of the things that could be, you know, having a background of that nature. So, and he talked about the win-win with bargaining, as I think others did too, but I think that was something that he mentioned. Who wants to go next? John. Councilman Fleming?
I was impressed with his passion, to start with. Very passionate person about anything that he does. As you mentioned, he obviously fit the profile of someone who has had the private sector as well as public sector experience. more into the private industry, been successful in that. He's had some political experience. And it's hard to find someone, and I'm one of the ones on the council that really sort of insisted that we look for someone with those attributes. So I was pleased to see that we were able to find someone that fit that profile. And I was impressed with Mr. Gabor. I thought he was did a really good job. He was very passionate, made some good points.
Okay. Councilwoman Broomfield?
I got a chance to talk to him about the community thing a little bit, and then he summarized more during the interview, but it seems he came into Marine City and they had some problems and issues with open contracts and some real problems in the police department. And in our discussion, just in general discussion with him in the evening at the community gathering, I was really impressed with how he stepped right in and handled that. Closed the contracts up, was able to cut costs, brought in some innovative ideas that they were not used to. So change, and certainly that's what, as our economy continues to change, we're going to have to look at change here in Troy. So he doesn't seem to be somebody that is would just fit a mold and come in and do the job by purely job description, but he would go over and above that. And I think he even said he would give 125%.
Councilwoman Gottlieb?
And I agree with everything Christina said. The other thing is, he was very careful to speak as if he wanted to be here, and some of them did not. In answering the questions, he said, I think what we could do. I think what we, and I am impressed by that, particularly since some of the candidates continue to tell us what you have here, or what you want, or, if you're going to lead us. I liked the assimilation of we into his language, and that showed some true desire to be here. I will be honest, I am still very concerned about the management of a city of 4,500 and the management of a city of over 80,000. I am concerned about that transition with him, that I don't have that concern with other candidates. So I will share that. And was the stampiest dressed?
Yes. He sure was, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, and he rode a Harley.
The thing that, in each of the candidates, we have things that we liked, and
Yeah.
pros and cons, but we agreed we were just going to say the pros, so, I know that's, okay, so, who wants to go next? Councilman Eisenbacher?
I was impressed with the transition he has made. Of all the jobs in automotive, paint shop guy, going to city manager is one I didn't expect. And his approach to the win-win was more than just sitting down at the bargaining table. He really had a unique entrepreneurial kind of solution for, I would say, a very difficult, throughout the community kind of problem. And he's an implementer. He didn't mention we did a study and here was the outcome. He was talking about, here was our problem and here's what we did with it. And in the next few years of our city, I think we're going to need a lot of creative solutions and implementation.
Councilwoman Furlong? I'm trying to rotate everything.
Again, from the graphic, I'll just bring that in as my little piece. He does score very high in reserved and careful. and that really fit with his answer, if you remember the question, which is a very, very difficult question, I think, find an error and explain it. He had a lesson learned to that, and it was kind of like measure twice. I'm playing with it, but that fits that reserved, careful in terms of making decisions. And that goes right on up to a pragmatic style. He's just right all the way on the right on that. So it was interesting on his profile, he's either on one or the other. So he spoke with much love about the community where he now resides. And not only in terms of the ownership, but in the progress that has been made, the collaborations that have been made, the desire to work all day, drive a ways, turn around, pick up the wife, and hurry on back for an event. And that love of the community where he now lives came through. I think of all of the candidates, spoke with such respect of our volunteer firefighters, did he not? And the programs that we've established. He was most familiar with those programs, I think, or at least simply was able to declare his knowledge of it. And so the balance of his sense of pride of place where he is now, an appreciation and an honor of Troy, I think, was something that came through when he spoke.
Representative Howard?
Just to follow up on what Councilwoman Kerwin said, is that I think he's committed to the community in which he's working, and my impression of him is that he gets things done. And he might not have the immediate knowledge of how he's going to do it, but he is deliberate in finding the answer. And I think he empowers people. And I think when he doesn't know something, he sets about finding out what he needs to know. And I think he's a quick learner, too. I think in Marine City he's made an excellent transition from private sector to the Treasurer's Office in Harrison Township to Marine City. And, I think being a city manager is a tough job. And but I think from the responses to his the reference responses, it shows that the disparate group of individuals have a great respect for the work that he does in Marine City. He's passionate, has a great work ethic, problem solver, and he has the ability to find creative solutions to difficult problems. And he also appears to be very positive. And I think in times of crisis, that's a breath of fresh air. It really helps to keep the council and the community calm in the face of difficult times.
Councilman Fleming?
Yes, I went first, but I'd like a follow-up, Mayor.
Yes.
And keying off of something Councilwoman Kerwin stated, that difficult question we asked about identifying an error in judgment. So many of the candidates had to delay. He was and it wasn't a small error that he made. It was in the paint department. When you make an error of that nature, it was significant. But what impressed me is an individual I don't think would cover up something when you make a mistake. He would lay it out. I think, like Councilwoman Kerwin said, I think he's learned from that. Probably looks at facts and data more. But if there is a mistake, he wants to address it, correct it, and move on. Not one that would try to cover up at all, but would admit and come forward and say, look, this was an error in judgment. Let's do something about it right away. That impressed me. And I know if someone asked me that question, I would struggle answering it as well. I felt bad asking it, but I think it was a good question. But I really was impressed the way he responded immediately, and I'm sure if we'd give him time, he would have had another one. But I think he's learned from those mistakes, but he's not afraid to admit, and I appreciate that.
Anyone else want to? Yes, Councilman Eisberger?
That really grabbed me is of all the candidates, he's got the proven track record of being successful under fire. I mean, he was a Vietnam vet. I mean, he was in very high-stress situations and obviously learned how to
And he rides a Harley.
Twice, okay. Okay, anybody else? Jane Baez DeSessa? Next. Now, she was soft-spoken but articulate in speaking. And she talked about employees of an organization working as a team of colleagues who work together and relying on their expertise. I thought that she was thoughtful in her answers of what we asked of her. She spoke about the economy. She referred to her experience both years ago and in her recent experience in Berkeley. And let me see what else. Lots of times on the answers, she would answer, yes, I do, and then she'd go on. So, she was answering very directly and then went on to explain it, and I thought that was good. I thought she gave very honest answers. Some of the answers that she gave may not have been what some people might want to hear on some things, but I thought she came forward as really giving very straightforward, honest answers. I like that. I think everybody paused on that error question. I even had that down for John. Did everybody pause a little bit and thought before they brought something forward? She also thought that training for employees in city council was important, and that talked about successes, experience, education, labor negotiations, that kind of thing. Mary, since you've been on KLM quite often, you want to go next, Councilman Kerwin? I'm trying to rotate it.
I'll do the graphic. Again, we've talked about thinking out of the box and imaginative is a high score here, and I think that it's important to bear that in mind. We have some detailed people here on staff, but imaginative, and when we talk in terms of imaginative, I was very, for me, excited to hear about the House for $1. I think that there's some opportunities which we've met with some we've heard some resistance of doing things like that. But I think we have to be open to looking at different ways of doing things, considering what's on our plates, what we'll face in the city. So some of these ideas need to be thoroughly vetted. I'm not saying, but we can't simply, I would hope going forward, we wouldn't simply close off all ideas without saying, hey, another community has tried this. Let's look at a plan to see if this will work. And that's what they did, was experiment on a pilot. We'll do one for $1, and the benefit came from that. And I think I was excited about that. Jane, I believe, is the only one that we've had an opportunity to see, whether it's on cable or sitting at a table and so on. Appeared overly nervous, and I appreciate Councilmember Broomfield. I think it probably comes from the relationship that, how are you doing? And she simply confessed right away, I'm so nervous. And unnecessarily so, given her level of experience, but it just came through, that nervousness during the interview and also at the practice sessions, even though many of us have seen Jane at whether a function or presenting or doing something and know her to be extraordinarily competent. Brings a wide range of views, big and small, in Michigan and out, knows a lot about Troy and values it. Again, appreciated the great she spoke of the honor and the respect for staff and what's been established in the city. That's Jane.
Councilman Eisbacher?
I had a bunch of concerns about Jane, and she was the one candidate that I knew before the process started from Sacra and from the surrounding communities. So I did research to find out, because I mean, speaking bluntly once again, I couldn't imagine a $15 million community center being proposed in a community of 15,000 people. So I researched it and found out that her proposal was a $2 million refurbishment, and it was the community group that was bringing forward and our council that was bringing forward the alternative plan. And the same thing with the nativity scene, how they moved it off of the city property. Did the research and found out that it was the council that was pushing to move it off, and she was following through with their wishes. And unlike Troy, they don't have a permanent legal staff, so they didn't have the resources to fight the ACLU suit on that matter. And so what I've learned is that she's exceptionally good at following through on what the council's asking her, irrelevant of what she proposed or not. And she's been dealing with a financial crisis already for many years in Berkeley. So she's seen a lot of solutions that already work and learned from experience there. Also found out from talking and from also in her information is that she's extremely good at finding good people to work for her when the openings were there. So I think that's a big key for leadership, is being able to have a vision for the city and bring people along with you that will implement well.
I'm going to go in a different order. Councilman, I'm not going to call on Christina next. I'm going to call on Councilman Howerlag. I'm trying to rotate us so we're not always in the same order, if you don't mind.
Oh, is he going to take my points?
Well, I'm sure a lot of us
I'll
share
call
a
you
lot.
first for the next one.
Sure, a lot of us share some of the same impressions of some of the candidates, but the thing about Jane Bias DeSessa is that I always forget that she lives in Hawley because she's so passionate about the community in which she works. And we were talking about that the other day, and I said, does she still live in Hawley? Now, I will tell you, I think it's just indicative of the person that she is to become engaged in her community. And she did, by the way, mention a willingness and excitement even to live in Troy. I found her both in the interview, and her background, and then my first-hand knowledge of her and, of course, what I read in the press. That I find her to be a hard worker, and I don't know that she has any qualms about staying late if that's what it takes to get the job done, or researching an item over the weekend. I think that she's going to be committed to us if we employ her. The way I read her nervousness was, I think she just really wants to be here, and maybe it's a faux pas that she admitted that she was nervous, but I think it just shows her compassion, and she's a passionate person about it. And, I think that's actually, I see that actually as positive. She admits, hey, I'm nervous, I just respect somebody that can admit their weakness. She did stumble a little bit on the other question, though, but that would have been her good answer. At any rate, I think she did a good job with Sacra, and which is our trash authority, and in managing really wide variety of interests. And she was a person who was respected by, I don't know, not everybody here necessarily has the history of the situation there, but the key takeaway with this is that she was respected by all parties involved. She became chairman of a very dysfunctional board, if you will. And I think through her leadership and her even-handedness, that really, obviously it was one of many things that helped to get a situation resolved. But I have a lot of respect for her. And I think in Berkeley she's been forced to do a lot with very little. Some of our other communities to the south have been in the same boat. And I think she's helped to guide that city through a very difficult journey, and she's done a pretty good job.
Councilwoman Broomfield?
You didn't take my point. But we kind of talked about it, her honesty. I think we've all talked that her honesty, her transparency, what you see is what you get. I really like that in people. There's no guessing, are they just putting on a facade for us? Very real, very honest. I also have to agree with Councilman Eisenbach in terms of carrying out the council wishes. She nervously brought up the brick intersection and, tried to present the facts, but when the council said, no, we want a brick, she did it. And these other things. And, we have been getting some emails about the nativity scene and all that, and I was very pleased to hear you say that it was really the council, and she carried out the council wishes, not so much her own. And that's important, very important to me.
Okay, who has it? Councilwoman Beltran?
Well, I agree with Christine. One of the things that was most important to me is her sincerity and her honesty. The other thing that in answering various questions, and at one point she came right out and said, to me the organization comes first. We were all hired to work for the organization. And so to her, the organization and the good of the organization comes first. And as a career city manager, that is the mindset I would expect. And yet I think she was the only candidate to actually say that. And she does have a professional demeanor. She was very nervous. And she's going to have to do it. Yeah. And the experience in multiple communities will be helpful.
Councilman Fleming, I think it's your turn.
It's hard to go last.
Figured
that out. I was impressed with Jane as well. Again, her energy, excitement, maybe a little nervousness, but she overcame that. And she's never at a loss for words. I think she used every second of her time. If I remember correctly, of all the candidates, she does not have a short answer. She goes into a lot of detail, very, very thorough, and wanted to make sure that we understood her answer, and she was really complete. She was trying to convey as much as she could with each question, and I appreciated that. And I appreciated her honesty too in sharing in the question about error in judgment, how she didn't shy away from that either. She came straight forward, and again, I think she probably learned a lot from that. But I was impressed. With it.
Anybody want to add anything more before we go to the next person?
I just want to
Councilwoman Kerwin?
I brought up her nervousness not as a criticism.
No.
It was simply a sign of her humanness. So I know that we've been hitting it again. That was in no reflection.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Just a fact, not a problem.
Okay, Stephen Alt and Christina Broomfield?
Oh, you have to be kind of-
I said I was going to give you first. Yeah, but first is my word.
Stephen Alt. When I first heard him at the community meeting, each candidate had an opportunity to get to speak, I was a little disappointed, and this is not negative, it's going to the positive. A lot of his private sector experience, but I didn't see a carryover as much. But when he came in for his interview, he was the last one, and I was so tired, I have to admit. I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to fall asleep. And he interviewed wonderful. He had direct answers. He, when asked, he applied those, his experience over to how that would look in city management environment. I have to tell you, I woke up. I was energetic, and
he really impressed me during the interview with his ability to, while he didn't have the public experience, he took his experience and really was able, as best he could, there was some answers that he just doesn't have exposure to, but he really applied it well. So that was impressive.
Call on Nancy. Councilman Eisbacher?
I think I've been second most of the time.
You say a lot more than I call it. It's harder this way, isn't it?
I thought I'd get more time this one. Again, starting off a little negative and switching to a positive. He has the least city management experience of any of them, obviously, but he impressed me. I mean, I was surprised at his presentation on Thursday night and in his answering of questions in front of us. He has the MBA that we asked for, a master's degree. He understands organizational dynamics, it appears. He understands the financing. He understands transforming organizations. He's been forced to do it in the extreme cases of rapidly divesting a company. And he did surprise me.
Councilman Fleming?
Okay. Well, I asked for a candidate with the private sector experience that could think out of the box, and we have him. And I was really impressed with Steve. Never met him before, and he really has had a breadth of experience with his various jobs, both building organizations up, bringing it back down to a level needed to rebuild. And he's done it, I believe, more than once. That's a tremendous asset, I think. I think he's not limited in his thinking outside the box, would bring a different view to this role that we wouldn't get from any of the other candidates. I think it would be a learning curve, obviously, but I really was very comfortable with him, seeing what he's been able to accomplish in his career. I was really impressed with his ability of what he accomplished with various organizations. Strong financial background. I think he's a person that would listen really well, but not procrastinate in making the decisions that needed to be made. I think he would move forward very quickly, but he would have the plan with a goal in sight, and everyone around him on staff and council would understand what it looked like, what the outcome was going to be, and at the same time be able to measure the results as you move forward. And to me, it was a breath of fresh air. Totally different in respect from the other candidates, but to me, a breath of fresh air.
Councilman Beltrame?
With all due respect, I did think he did well, but he could have watched all those interviews on cable all day long.
I wish
So,
I would know
you
that. Know one way or not. Yeah.
So we don't know whether that was intuitive or practice. So
The other candidates
that we have to
couldn't.
think about. No, they couldn't. He was the only one who lived here.
Well,
So.
you can go anywhere. and do that.
Anyway,
That's not an excuse.
he does have international business experience, which as we become more global is significant, because we may not always have a flavor of that sitting on the council. So that is, and he does have good process efficiency and change understanding. I have some concerns, but
Mayor Pro Tem Howard?
Just to speak to something that Bill Drini said, is that honestly, my opinion of the interview is it's a piece of a pie. And
Pardon? I'm sorry.
It's a piece of a pie. It's one of many pieces. And yeah, I think he interviewed well too. But to speak specifically to him, I guess what I noted was that his focus on management accountability and the accountability of the chain of command, that was good. He's good at, or at least he says he's good at carrying out directives of the governing body, and those references would appear to confirm that. And I sense a willingness and ability to learn, because if he is hired, he's going to have to transition. I think we all know that government is a little bit different than business, but certainly a different perspective is something that he would bring just by his career, and so that's what I would say about him.
Okay. Something further?
Just to follow up on Martin's point about carrying out, it was in response to one question. It's actually your question, and you know, discuss the situation if you Gifford, what would you do? And his response was present the facts, advise, and execute, and that fits perfectly well with the graphic profile. His graphic profile is exactly that. I'm married to this graphic profile, so I'm very so he's thoughtful, logical, serious, cautious, no-nonsense, pragmatic. Structure is important. He is reserved and careful, thick-skinned. So in terms of looking at a city manager, we want to bear those things in mind when we're making our results. I did think he was. I'll just share that at. You noticed that at the table I started mentioning Vision 2020, which we hadn't talked about as a consensus question. But when we all attended the community forum, one resident said, "I think this is really important." I'm like, "Well, I don't know. I'm going to do that. I'll even ask a follow-up." So I tended to tag that on. He was the only one who brought up Vision 2020 unprompted. So however that came up, he did bring that up. And it was, I didn't try to phrase it as a gotcha to anybody. I figured they were on the website and would look. But and tangentially, the only one who then followed up on 2020 was Pam Mantell, who wanted to bring in her scoreboard and then judge how we were doing. And I didn't want to go that way, but I did want to share that with you.
Yeah, and again, it's in the profile too. Like,
yes, it is. That's a clue.
So it's
check it out. Let's see. One more thing.
See if you leave anything for me.
No, I don't think you'll do it.
I'll do that.
Can you borrow it? No, and this is just a response to my question. He was just straight up. You know, do you have a record of success in strengthening employment and housing stock? No. However, he went on to a way to address foreclosed properties and so on.
Yes. So
that's a very forthright way to answer it. I don't know if I could have. I have interviewed people. I need a job. So I do find myself at an interview a lot of time. I'm just thinking so hard. I mean, I could feel I'm thinking so hard, and his answers just. I mean, I was stunned by his body language when he asked him what I think is the toughest one is name and error, especially for a conscientious person. That is a tough one. And he just kind of rocked back in his chair and swiveled here, and I thought, wow, you know.
He's okay with admitting that error.
Very comfortable, comfortable in that seat on that. And for most conscientious, that would be, you know, it would be very, very tough to approach that. So.
You were impressed. You were surprised also.
His background and work experience is in the financial area, and that came across in every single one of his answers. He gave a financial answer to every question. And even when pressed about specific things, because as we all know, the city manager's job is very diverse, covers a lot of areas other than finance. Finance is just one section of that. He came across as being personable and talked about team building process. Has done it in the private sector, not in the public sector. And he talked about executing the decision after it's made by council, and talked about strategic error was, when he talked about his error, it was a strategic error, not a critical error, he said. And he talked a little bit about the win-win method of bargaining. Let me see. I guess that's about it. Anybody else? Okay. What do you suggest we do next? You want to take a 5-minute break? All right. Need a 5-minute break? Okay, we're in recess. I have to always tell the camera. We're in recess for 5 minutes when we're back. great time. I consulted Mrs. Sims, and she suggests that the next thing that we do is go around giving your first and your second choice, correct? And see where we go from there. Okay? We want to go in order of you know how we always list the council members? Is that better?
I can,
Okay.
like me to, but I don't know what the rotation was in the last meeting.
I mean, I just go by our roll call order that we usually call roll, okay? Pardon?
Or volunteers.
Or volunteers? Well, usually when we do roll call,
I can keep track of the rotating basis if you'd
Okay.
like me to, but I would start with you, Mayor, then, and then rotate from that point on.
Mayor Schilling?
none of the above.
For one or two?
Pardon?
For neither, one or two?
Correct.
Councilmember Beltramini?
I am most pleased with either of the two women. And in either order, I could read them, I think.
Councilwoman Broomfield?
It's tough. Before I say my two I'm looking at, I will say that I thought all of them were very good. We spent the last hour talking about their qualifications. What I'm looking at is more about a fit with our city and as well as a fit with the economy that we're in and what we're going to be facing over the next couple of years. And so I based my feelings on that because I think so many good talents are before us. But I would say, not necessarily in order, but I would like to talk more about John Gaber and Steve Ault.
Councilmember Eisenbacher?
Right now, John Gabor and Jim Payne.
Councilmember Fleming?
Right now, got Gabor and Ault.
Councilman Howerlag?
I would have to say Gabor and DeSessa.
Councilwoman Kerwin?
I guess I would consider overall qualifications, ability to do the job and take us forward without a stutter step. I would go Zerlag, Lamoureux.
My reason in saying none of the above, that meant the five that we, the candidates, even though I appreciated the positive discussion about all of them, I had felt in truly giving each of them a chance to show their abilities, to show whether they had more ability than those that we already have presently on staff. I did not find that. I think that we have people on staff at the present time that are much more capable than any of these five candidates.
Mayor, should I
Yes.
report out? We have 4 persons who have listed Mr. Gaber, 2 persons listing Mr. Ault, 2 persons listing Ms. DeSessa, one person listing Mr. Payne, one person listing Ms. Antil, and one person listing Ms. Zerlag and Mr. Navarado.
And my feelings are the same. I feel that Mr. Zerleg and Mr. Lamorato are very qualified to do the job, and have shown that.
Mayor, so do we have two? Was there like a Lamorato? We only had listed one.
Yes, that's fine.
So, Mayor, there's Mr. Payne then, and Ms. Antil would be the only two candidates with one vote. Ms. Payne and Antil would be the only two with one vote.
Now what?
Trying to talk and work toward consensus. Well, the other thing is John Gaber said at the public meeting that he wanted a unanimous on that all.
Yes, you mentioned that, yes. He did say that at the public meeting and reiterated it when we had the interview.
Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem Howard?
Well, I did ask him afterwards because I told him that, I inquired of him rather. I wanted clarification, and he expressed that what he was looking for was a collaborative working relationship between council and staff, and that the more support there was on council for the nominee, the better. And so it was more of a value statement necessarily than, more so than an absolute. And I truly believe that no matter who we pick, I think that we, as a council, owe an obligation to that individual, whether that be somebody employed or somebody brought in new. We have a responsibility as a professional board of directors, if you will, running this city, to collaborate with that person, no matter who it is.
Good. Question?
Councilman Fleming?
For Mr. Sims. Did you have any follow-up with him after that statement from Mr.?
No, I did not discuss that any further with him.
Because I overheard some of that conversation. I think I was concerned about that as well.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, Councilwoman Beltrini?
I would like to see his skill set on staff. I do not believe that a city of this complexity is, in essence, a good starter set for someone with that experience. I would love to see his skill set on staff. But I don't believe his skill set matches the leadership necessary for this community. That's where I am with that. I love his private sector and get the job done kind of stuff, but some of the caveats that were given, I'm uncomfortable with him at the task.
I would ask council to turn to Mr. Gaber's information in section D, where it lists his present position and what that entails, the population served and the scope of authority under his name. And that is my concern also. And I think that this documents it very much the comparison between that and Troy, and knowing the difference in the complexities of the cities. Now, I know that he's had other work experience, other job experience, but has not had management experience, in my view, that meets the standard, I think, that the citizens would expect. I agree there are certain things about his interview and the things that he said at the meeting came across well, but he even indicates that he's seeking to grow professionally as well as use his skill set in a larger Michigan city. And I think that this is kind of a big step, going from a population of 4,500 and a staff of 26 full-time and 40 part-time with an operating budget of $4.8 million to what we deal with here in Troy.
Mary, he did have quite a bit of experience in the private sector. I mean, we're comparing what he's dealt with in the public sector.
Yes.
Of course, we do know that for, I think, 30 years, he did manage much more than he's doing right now in the public. Just as a point.
None of it is a senior executive, though.
Right.
It wasn't executive experience, though.
No.
There's only 3 of them in automotive
So.
for North America, yeah.
Was he a senior executive?
Well, I
He
mean,
wasn't-
there's the head of
But he
each
wasn't
company.
VP or any of that either. There are several layers between where he ended up that could be senior executive above where he was. He still was, pretty much single function oriented, and that's what concerns me.
He does have more of a hands-on approach, but someone who's done it on a small scale, it's easier to delegate than someone who hasn't performed certain jobs in a smaller scale. So we just have to obviously be delegating more and learning, having to learn the staff and the strengths and weaknesses of the staff. And I think he is a people person, and he would learn.
But my concern is, do we want someone to come on as our city manager as a learning situation?
Everybody's going to have something to learn. No one's coming into this position other than Mr. Zerlak, possibly, that would have intimate knowledge and working of this city. So anyone outside of that will have some learning curve, but that learning curve can be pretty quick. And we knew that going in. Just because you leave one city and come to another doesn't mean you understand everything, the internal workings of the existing city. Every job is different. And titles, I do not get hung up on titles, because president and CEO of one company is not even equivalent to, line supervision another. So it's all relative. So I don't get really hung up on. I was more concerned about the person's attitude, work ethic, and he does have a public and private experience. It's a hands-on type person. I think he really cares deeply about the community and passionate about the community that he works in and lives in. Obviously, I would like for him to live here. That's a little issue. I would like for him to live here. That may be an issue.
I know, we talked about that in the interview a little bit, and he had good answers for his stand on, why he wanted to do what he wanted to do, but I don't know that fits with our, what we expect either.
And he never said he would move.
Pardon?
He never said he would move.
I know.
No, I don't think he was gonna, I didn't get that feeling.
The notes I thought was he wanted time. He didn't
Yeah,
want to
he
move within
wanted
6
time,
months.
but he never said he would move at all. He said, I
No.
just can't even think about doing that now. It would
Right.
be too big a strain on me and my
And
family.
he doesn't even live in
financially."
Green City.
No, he
From
doesn't,
there.
so.
He lives in Harrison Township.
Right.
He still lives in Harrison County.
He seemed very honest. and
Yeah,
candid.
yes.
I know in the background information that it was related that it would be like a 6 months, but in this, he seems to like the community he lives in. And, let's see, I would suggest looking at the graphic profile when you're talking about the people person, because the graphic profile doesn't indicate that. It indicates reserved, careful, no nonsense, pragmatic, shy or uninterested. So if it is a desire to be out in the community, as was mentioned at one time, that very good for the jobs that he had before, perfect for those jobs. For this job, just can't anticipate. If that was a desired attribute, that's not going to be here because it's not at a comfort level.
It's interesting that the profile came out that way because in all of his references, where these were people that have worked with him and known him for years, they all came out. As a matter of fact, one of them said one of his weaknesses, good and bad, was passion. And, someone who really, like, I don't know the passion is about being an extrovert, but sure seemed like one to me.
They were all people whose names he gave too. There wasn't anybody off his list asked.
Okay. Did we have some off the
They-
list for the others?
Well, the other thing is too
Some,
that.
I had names that did not call back from who weren't on the list.
Right.
That was an informal.
There, in order to do the profile, I was interested in what questions were asked and how similar or dissimilar they were to the questions that we asked, and how it came out then as a profile. So I thought that was quite interesting because it gave us data to compare and how we saw them in different situations. And this is then analytical, and for those of you that are familiar with this type of reporting document, it gives you, another piece of the puzzle, so to speak.
Here.
Is that Representative Howard?
I think, if you read this whole thing, it, all of the explanations for what we're viewing, there are all sorts of warnings. Don't overemphasize, don't overread too much into this.
This is one piece.
Oh, yes, it's only, we're not.
See, right, I know that. What you don't understand, or I should say, I don't know, what I mean is what we're not discussing is that this is a personality assessment, and that through practice and through effort, you can actually overcome these things. Otherwise, people with certain personalities will be relegated to certain jobs. And we would just give people a personality assessment when they're old enough to take it, and that would be pretty much the end of it. And all sorts of elements of life would be rendered obsolete. So, yes, it's interesting, it's important, but I think his background, how he behaves in the interviews, his responses, I think, should be taken in conjunction with all. That's what I'm saying.
As with
With all 5 of the candidates, yeah.
Councilor Kerwin?
and the evaluations that came from the community and the staff, and I think that has to play as well. And in that, perhaps you should.
Right. I found that the information that we gleaned from the community and the staff comments was quite interesting, because of course we as individuals had a lot of written data. They had the ability to look at written data that was online and the resumes and stuff like that. They didn't have as much information as we did, but I thought it was quite interesting to see what people had to say about each of the candidates. I thought that gave us a look that was good for us to have some opinion on. And many times we've asked that. We said, what does staff think? What does the community think? And so we asked for that. We did get that. So I think we should take that kind of information into account too, which I'm sure we are.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I read
Yes.
all that, if I may, and I appreciate the community input and the staff input, obviously. But on the community input, what's valued, and I read all of it, it's not statistically valid at all. It's just the people on the show. We did not have enough people. I was disappointed that we didn't get enough people from the community. People that really cared showed up, but that's not all the people
Right.
that
Oh,
we
I
serve
know.
in this city.
Oh, sure.
There's not even 1/10 of 1%, or 1/100th of 1%. So when I read that, and I appreciate, and I could just about tell you the individual who wrote each one, because we know these people. We're around them all the time, and their opinion counts. But it's, in the scheme of things, while it's significant, and I don't mean to, talk down to anybody here, but your opinion is important, but there's a lot of other opinions we don't hear, and that's silent majority. It's unfortunate, but that's a fact of life, and so I don't want to read anything into it. And as far as the staff's concerned, we value that as well. But I get really concerned when the staff are too comfortable with someone. You can be too comfortable and sing praises and how great it would be. And maybe it will work that way. But in this environment, it's important that we have teamwork. But being too comfortable with the person doesn't necessarily translate to teamwork in an environment when you have to make difficult decisions. You can't be friends to everybody. We would all like to. And in management, I learned that. You have to make the best decision, and you can't be biased by friends or people that like you or don't like you. You do the right thing. And so when you read these comments, I caution you, when you're putting weight on that, and while it's important, not to let that sway you on an individual because everybody on the staff loved them. Obviously, that's not the case. Everybody loved everybody. But please be careful about that, overly influencing your decision. We need a person here with the leadership abilities, decision-making abilities, one that will not procrastinate and will move forward, make the decisions we have to make, and then build this community back up with a vision, that this council supports and directs.
Councilman Beltrami?
But to go there, that's my concern. He was asked a vision question and answered with a process. And if you want a visionary leader, you have to get someone out of the processes to think of the vision, to articulate it so that then the processes can be worked out by the very good staff that we have, which is where I go back to. He's got skills, but they're which $5 bill to spend skills. And so to build the visionary leadership, he needs an interim step between us and Marine City. I absolutely believe that.
I know he did struggle
It's a valid point,
with,
right.
he was the only candidate that did struggle with that first question, difference between
Leadership
management
and
Yes.
management.
Yes.
and management and
Leadership, right.
He did struggle with that. Right. Everybody
I
else
didn't get that.
And then
got it right away,
yeah.
but he didn't get that one.
Yeah, and then he deferred the vision to us, which is fine, and we take direction from our community, but he didn't see the city manager as a leader in that at all. And I'm concerned about that. And that's where I say,
Again, we're taking
Yeah.
a snapshot of one question, we're
Yeah.
microing in on that, but you're right.
No,
You're right, Rob, and he did say managers' day-to-day activities execute goals and vision efficiently, and the leadership comes from the council, and the city manager has facilities to do, and hold people accountable and execute the vision of the council. What you say you're strongly looking for is someone who not only can execute a vision, but can contribute to the vision. And I'm not sure whether he can or not, but just because his answer is that way doesn't mean that he can't do it. But I understand I understand your perspective, though. I appreciate
Well,
that.
and then he did the same thing later when Louise asked about long-term and short-term tension. And he didn't address the long-term goal and the vision. He addressed, you got to have a sense of urgency to work out the processes to get there. And that was his answer. And so I appreciate his skills and his public and private, and I think that's great. And he's got good financial skills. That's part of why I appointed him to the Municipal Finance Committee. But again, between us and Marine City is a huge gap with a very experienced staff that he's not used to having that much staff, that much credible staff to rely on either. So all of that comes into play in my decision. And without the vision and the leadership, I've got huge problems.
I would think that that would be very difficult for someone to come into a position with this experienced staff, the number of staff we have, and the large budget, the things that we're looking at, that all cities are looking at, and that it would be, I'm not saying that he wouldn't make a good city manager in a city that is in between the sizes, and that's what Robin is saying too, between the sizes of Marine City and Troy. I just don't think he's ready for Troy. I think that we find very quickly that the fit isn't there. And, you know, we have to speak up. I know
you do.
Yeah, you know.
Well, Mayor, if I may.
Yes, Councilman Eisenbacher?
Thank you. If you go back to that page that you said in his resume, I look at those numbers, you multiply by 20, and that's where the city of Troy is. Is it harder to do an upscale, or is it harder to do a downscale?
Yeah.
I think
Right. I mean, he's got skills. I mean, we don't have a sewer plant. I mean, that's a whole nother nightmare that he dealt with. And I mean, that was his example of looking at the long-term goal of making an efficient water system. And then he described all the intermediate steps of dealing with people, dealing with issues, getting help, figuring out how to get the people with the skills to accomplish the task he wanted, after determining that all the issues in between. I thought it was it was a concrete example. It was a nuts and bolts example as opposed to some of the other people where it was, yeah.
I just can't get over putting somebody in charge of this organization who's got 2 years' experience. I just can't.
Some issue.
Pardon me? I'm sorry.
You don't like
What's wrong with Steve?
don't like my first choice either, huh?
I might, if John Gaber was the best of the litter with the only one with private experience or the only one with other ideas, I'd probably be willing to be there with you. But knowing that right now we really do need some staff leadership and that sort of thing, I think that that's pretty critical. And to run an organization this size, you really don't get that by managing 26 people.
And yes, if you look at the data, he's been the manager there since 2007.
I know.
And so,
Yeah, 2 years later.
you know, it.
Mayor?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Holliday?
One of the problems, and I was aware of this when we started down this process, is that when we ask for something different and we get something different, the question is, are we willing to move forward? And even the last time when we did this 3 years ago, we came to that same bridge, and we seem to always turn away from it. And and it may just be the differences between members of this body, but I think it's you're going to be very hard pressed to find somebody with a lot of unless you want them to be 125 years old, with a lot of experience in all these different areas at the same time. There are very, very, very few people, and you can also look to people who have been successful in different fields. Some of the most successful people have the most unconventional route to that success, whether that be entrepreneurs, chief executives, mayors, presidents, city managers, whatever the case might be. And the reason why he was one of my 2 people I mentioned a few moments ago was because what I can tell, and I'm only one of 7 here, but my opinion, evaluating all of this information and all of these processes we've gone through, I have the confidence that he has the skill set and the tools and the ability to learn. And he's surrounded in here, in Troy. He's got good department heads. He's got good assistants. And I believe he's got a good city council. And if everybody is willing to work as part of this process, himself included, then we should all be just fine. And if this body would like to require him to achieve certain certificates or degrees or whatever, we can certainly include that as part of our criteria for him to continue.
Mayor?
Councilwoman Thornhill?
One of your other choices, Councilman Howard, was Jane from Berkeley. Now, she would be almost like to the opposite. That's kind of like on the spectrum. I'd kind of like to hear your thoughts if she was your second choice.
Well, I actually, to be honest with you, I had, to me, Gabor was at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And I was comfortable with a number of different candidates. I was comfortable with her. And I think it's a matter of the ability, I like people that work hard and that believe in accountability, and I have great respect for that. And I think we've got, no matter who's on this council, it's just going to be very difficult the next few years, and it's going to take an enormous amount of work, and of course we're going to have to work hard as well.
That's the thing about Jane.
Councilwoman Domingue?
That is the thing about Jane. She has, weathered some of that and shown an ability to get through it.
Her community was one of the first ones to really.
Councilman, I can't hear you. Go ahead, talk up, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
Digressing to less formal. The thing that between Jim Payne and Jane Vice DeCessa, they were 2-3, could have been either way for me. Berkeley got into the financial situations much sooner than the rest of us, yes. So she's already been weathering drops in revenue, stagnant revenue for several years. And dealing with a contentious council at times.
Talk about Mr. Alt at all, or?
Well, there were
What?
2 people that mentioned him.
Two.
And Christina, yes.
At 4, 2, and 2. And 2.
Yeah, 4, 2, 2.
2.
Can we move to Mr. Alt?
If you wish to speak about it.
Yeah, we would, because, is there anything else to say about Mr. Gabriel? Again, as I said, some of the things that Mr. Gabriel has, Mr. Alt does not have, but he certainly has a leadership capabilities, I think. He's demonstrated that in the private sector. Very strong. Some areas that we just mentioned that Mr. Gabriel was maybe lacking a bit as far as leadership. I think Mr. Alt has it, albeit in a different sector. But, again, I thought he was one of the things I was actually looking for was very pleased to see.
Uh,
And I was wondering what the other people thought.
My concern was, I don't know of any other city our size or even some smaller size cities that would consider having someone be their city manager that had no experience at all in the city manager field. Because of the complexities and diversities of things that are dealt with, I agree that he has qualifications in the financial area, and yes, he's had experience in the business field. But I just do not see that as something that we should expect in a city manager. And I really, I don't know if Robin wants to speak to it, because you've been to a lot of cities with all your things with MML. And of course we don't know, because we haven't been part of the interview process with other cities. Perhaps they've looked at it and then they decided against that person. I don't know. And you know, I'm trying to be gracious about it. I'm not being negative, you know, and he is one of our residents, and we appreciate the fact that, you know, he wants a job.
He's a resident, has a wonderful family here, has raised his family here.
Yes,
You know.
wants a job.
And Christina also put her, so perhaps Christina would like to speak to
Well, because, again, as I said earlier, I think all candidates are great. Again, I compliment you for bringing so much to the table, and each very different in their own way. We didn't know, you know, clones. And as I look at the choices, I'm looking for a fit, not so much, you know, this is the typical requirements or criteria for the job, so can we fit this a round peg in a round hole, you know? I'm looking for a fit for Troy in our city as it relates to the economy and what we're going to be facing, the budget deficit, the financial issues, the cutting that we may very well be faced with. And so I'm looking for someone who can do that, who can look at our budget, come up with innovative ideas, not just layoffs, you know, or not just, as he said, you don't cut straight across the board. You know, you don't want to do that. I wasn't so sure I was comfortable. Jane said that?
Yeah, he said it, but Jane did too.
Okay, I remember him saying that. Maybe Jane, okay.
Yeah,
She
both.
did.
Yeah,
She
the
saying
only
that.
two that
She
did.
did, that's
She
right. We
did.
had a couple people that did say that.
She chose not to.
You know, and then he said you would look at what you had, see what you had to cut, do it all at once, and then the bleeding stops and people don't come to work and wonder if they're going to have a job next week, you know. I'm not so sure if that would work. But it impressed me in the sense of, you know, his financial background and ability to come into companies that were having so much financial difficulty. He has that experience. And so I see that experience in what we're faced with. Now, I totally get that that's only one aspect. And so I do have concerns. I mean, how can you not have concerns if a person has no city manager experience? I do have concerns. I want in a candidate somebody, or in a city manager, somebody that can really come in and lead the city in the economy that we're faced over the next couple of years. I think that's a unique person. I'm not so sure it's just the person that fits. You know, I appreciated Jim Payne, I did, but I don't know that, I think he's been a city manager for 30 years and he has all this experience and everything, but I don't know if he can, in a unique way, take this city through the next couple of years. That's where I look at these two guys. So, that was my.
Can I ask the question? And this is, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but you're a professional consultant. You interview people all the time, and you have the role of placing city managers and other professionals around the country. You brought us what we asked you. You know, someone out of the box, thinker, entrepreneur type, business, private sector. Have you seen that type person take a position in other communities, maybe you have, maybe you haven't, I'm just asking, have you seen that other communities make a decision and go this far out of the norm, so to speak, as to what, conventional methods might be? Have you seen that? Where someone comes into a city that really has had no public sector experience?
Not without significant volunteer or nonprofit experience, board experience.
So they either
they've been a city or county, if they haven't been a city or county manager or an assistant city or county manager in the past, they might have, been board of directors, American Cancer Society, United Way, or, chaired a major citizens group.
And in your professional opinion, that helps transition from the purely private sector to the purely public sector. That's an intermediary step. You've seen it work, but you've never seen someone strictly from the private sector interjected into a position like this.
Not in a situation where the economy is, well, actually, no, not in this situation at all. Not without some other compensating factors.
I appreciate your input. That carries weight with me as much as I like. I don't want to be the guinea pig.
I understand.
But I really like this guy.
I understand what you're saying.
I mean, and probably to a fault, because I can relate to what he's done. I've never worked I've done nonprofits, but really never worked in the sector, in city government. But I have in industry and gone through some of the same turmoils that he has. But him even to a larger extent than I have. He's been much more successful than I ever was. So I admire that, and I admit it. That's why I felt so strongly about it. But I don't want to be so bull-headed about it that I don't use the wisdom that we need in this.
Because cities are different. And, not to say you shouldn't try to bring different things to it, but you should have, some exposure that will help you make the transition more quickly.
That helps me.
Yeah, and the whole thing about the ordinances, the laws, the codes, all of that, things that we deal with in cities that you don't deal with. In business, you handle some things in business that cities don't.
Never will.
Right. And so I think that's why I bring up those kinds of things. Because I've been involved in, with the city a long, long time, and so I have a perspective of the kinds of things that in any city, whether it's Troy, Ann Arbor, Sterling Heights, Birmingham, Royal Oak, Berkeley, Clawson, that is necessary for a manager to do the things that they need to do.
Okay.
So that's why I feel so, not speaking about being passionate.
Having said that, I'm willing to compromise, make a move. I'm just not sure where yet.
Okay.
But I will stop. I'll take off my. He was my first choice, but I'll take off my motorcycle up the bullheaded, is what and look for another way. But I need to think about that a little bit more, because I was really coming into this room strongly convinced that was the right way to go. But you know what? I'm just one opinion, and I'm not always right. So I can be flexible.
And remember, Wade, oftentimes you said we do our best work when we sit around the table here together,
No doubt.
And you've also
And that's why it's important to have the deliberation and the give and take with the discussion.
And Wade, you said before that you've been surprised when you come, for example, with your mind made up. And that happened just recently when we were here. And that through dialogue and discussion, that's really the way the deliberation process is ideal. And the desire is to come with a consensus. We can live with that decision.
Right.
It may not be, hip, hip, hooray, we see that, but that we all can live with the decision. And that's what we've got to work for tonight.
So important, whatever we do tonight, that we are 100% behind whatever decision we make.
Or that we can all live with it.
Got to be strong. I got to come away feeling good about it.
Well, I do too. Otherwise, it's not consensus.
It's not just living with the decision we
No.
make. We aren't put here to live with
No.
the decision we make. It's going out of this room knowing that we have, at the very least, done no harm. I mean, having great confidence in that has to, we have to reach that point that 7 people can walk out of this room believing that it may not have been what each of us individually wanted, but we have set a course that will not harm the community, because it is our job to better the community and to avoid harm.
Absolutely. Agree 100%. That's the most important thing we do.
Yeah.
We're going to go from here. What about your, Christina, you brought up, when asked, what are you looking for? And the thing that you brought up consistently, David brought up something consistently, but you brought up, I think, was the importance, the first task would be to build a cohesive team of staff. Is that
Yes.
right? So now in looking at that, maybe we should take a look at the candidates and see in terms of that, who could build that cohesive unit. And for David's, who could, without much time, move us forward on a good budget, the budgeting. Isn't that right, David? Is that where you were going with yours?
Well, you were looking at a 5-year plan and.
Yeah, 1-year plan.
Right.
A secure 1-year plan and then a 5-year plan.
So looking at candidates for those 2 things, cohesive staff, because those were mentioned, and budget, what do we see?
I'm seeing any of my top 3.
And I didn't get your
We're
third.
favorable.
I saw John Gaber, Jim Payne, and who was your third?
Jane Vice DeSessa. All 3 of them are favorable, in my opinion.
Okay.
Jim Payne was only 1 vote.
Pardon?
Jim Payne received 1 vote.
I thought he was very good. I guess I'm reluctant to have him in because of uncertainties.
What kind of uncertainties?
With the economy and selling his house out there and all of that.
The Albuquerque market's one of the strongest in the country, and he was telling me that actually the real estate values in his area are increasing, so, and that people are offering more than the asking price, so I don't think that's an issue for him.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's amazing.
It's a nice
I mean,
area.
yeah, I mean, he's gonna leave that area. He's leaving New Mexico, so you don't have to worry about that.
He has been interviewing that.
Well, yeah, but as far as where he sees himself being best able to fit, his preference is to leave New Mexico.
The Wild West comment.
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
He's not the Wild West gunslinger.
No.
Former head of the Senate's in prison for embezzlement and kickbacks and federal,
But we digress.
we do this.
Yeah. Let's come back to the picture, real picture.
If we,
Good questions.
Councilman Burkhardt?
in looking at my top 2 choices, which I haven't left yet, no, I'm still,
I left.
don't leave too soon.
Perfect.
Gaber. When I looked at them, I looked at their uniqueness and, kind of stepping out of the box, and boy, I really hear what everybody's saying here about experience. But they're both unusual choices, there's no question about that. It's not the run of the mill. Having said that, It would be unusual to look at a candidate that's not a candidate, and to also discuss that person, which I really didn't know that Zerlag was on the list, per se, but it's been brought up twice. It's unusual to move in that direction since he didn't go through the process. But I'm not one to stick to just what's usual. So as we go down this list, I'm not opposed to talking about him any more than I am opposed to talking about Gaber or Alts, because it's all unusual. It's not just somebody that just is a common,
30-year city manager like Jim Payne.
yeah, come on in, and, you here's the list and you fit. And, that's not my, my way. So as we look at this, and since two of you have thrown that name in, I'm open to discussing him as well.
I did bring with me, in case we got to that point of discussing Mr. Zerlag, I did bring his resumes and background because I thought that might be something, if we got to that point, we might want to look at. I was not going to bring it out if we didn't get to that point.
They said before they didn't need anything like that.
If you wish to have that, I can pass it out to council. If you don't wish to have it,
I
you
don't need
have it.
that.
I don't need that.
Okay.
I'm just introducing him into the
I know,
mix for
I know. I'm
discussion.
just bringing that up because we looked at everybody else's accomplishments and looked at everybody else's background, and if we're comparing,
Mayor?
some people like to have written data, that's all.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Horvath?
Question for Ms. Sims, and I guess the council too, but first to Ms. Sims. Your recommendation is that we have two candidates, a primary and a secondary, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I guess my question to council, is that what we're planning to do?
In other words, who we ask. Like we ask somebody, we have two people that we voted on, and then we ask one, and if they turn it down, we ask two.
Well, not necessarily turning it down, but not able to, because, I would envision that the vote would be to, for either, Lori or myself to represent you all in terms of negotiating. And sometimes you don't come to a conclusion, or they get another offer. And so that's why I always like to have one, two people you're comfortable with.
Okay, makes sense.
Councilman Beltrame?
This is the 9th of July. We have to have somebody under contract by the 29th. We meet again on the 20th. And we could adjourn to and reconvene in this room on the 20th. I would really just say, this is our person. Go negotiate. And be firm about, this is our person. I have a real problem with having, 3 weeks and still saying, yeah, and if you don't want the job, somebody over here has already been voted on to take it. I know that offers a certain amount of incentive to settle a contract, but according to these 5 people who interviewed, they all want this job, and they all know what it pays. So let's pick our person, and if that doesn't work out in 9 days, then we'll meet again.
I agree.
Mayor?
That's fine.
That's my thought.
That's fine. But again, this is a little unusual because, I'm not going to be involved with any of the internal people. But, that's just me. But, you knew that from when you interviewed me from the get-go.
Right.
So.
Councilman Harlock, you asked for the floor?
I was just going to add that it's not an uncommon process what Ms. Sims is suggesting. And I am quite happy with it. And it served Oak Park, for example, very well. They end up with their, I believe, third choice candidate. At least by reading their minutes, that's what I could ascertain.
The person was their first choice
Anyhow, that's
before,
not,
and
that's
then chose
not.
to stay. Yeah, okay.
I'm just making an example of
I
the
know
city
it's
where
right.
and I'm happy with it. And so I just wanted to disagree with you.
Surprise.
Can go either way.
Christina, when we were looking for an interim, you originally thought of Mr. Sirleaf. And I know that all members of councils, except for me, I hadn't talked to him, but there was a thought immediately that this person could come in and step in and move us forward. And I, had no contact and had never worked with him at all. Have found his performance to be flawless. His manner, his step back into the community, his closing of the contracts, his something you mentioned frequently, his respectful enforcement of what comes from the table. Even Monday night, which became kind of contentious, he simply summarized, these are the 3 things you're looking for.
Yeah.
You'd like a study session. That will happen. We'll get, and then, he's able to settle the waters here, which it takes skill. And that's why I think at this time, recognizing everything, that he does bring that ability to work both with staff and this council, and has been able to enforce that respect, which has been a request. He's also stepped into something that was missing, and that's that role in the community. That was a desire and that we were doing without. So for that ability to keep going, Councilman Eisenbacher had mentioned since January a desire to see perhaps some collaboration and regionalism take place to our benefit. That's something that we need to be able to move on, and I think we have in place someone who can strategically move on that on our behalf, because there's groundwork laid there. For those things to fulfill, not only looking at a budget which he's had experience with, cohesiveness in staff and enforcing when appropriate and necessary. I think that he is the one for the time. Maybe not forever, but by gosh, for right now.
Well, when you say not forever, and I spoke with our city attorney, this is a good time to, I'm sorry, Mayor, can I?
No, it's all right, you're fine, you're fine.
Because whoever that we asked, I'm very interested in, I don't want to say long-term, 10 years, but I certainly don't want to say 1 year or 2 years. Because our staff is unstable, they don't know what's going to happen next week. We're facing some real challenges. And so I did ask our city attorney if our charter allowed for a contract, whoever we would have voted in, of a minimum of 3 years. Where there would be, it wouldn't be at will, it would be for cause. In other words, we've always hired at will, which simply means you really don't have to have a reason. If you're just not getting along, if there's no big thing, one or both can agree to leave. For cause means that you have to show a valid reason why you're letting somebody go. And things have been so unstable that I was hoping that we could look at maybe a 3-year commitment, at least. Because I even think we had, I don't know if she's here, but we had a member in the community a couple times. How do we know you're going to stay here? And we've been used to longevity. Our city managers have all been here for a while until this last, well, I think anyway, but I was told, thank you very much, Ms. Bloom, that our city charter does not allow it for that. That it must be at will. Is that, can you speak to that?
Yes, thank you, and this is something that I did just pull today, and of course, I thought I printed out the right ones. But it basically says that it, I'm sorry, can I have just a moment to try and find out where it is?
Well, we've always done, well, she's looking for that. We always do a contract, through having our labor attorney
Yes, yes.
work out the details and.
Well, if it's about, if
other
it's
things. But
available.
You're talking about the length of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Whoever it's at, not whether it's at will or not,
Yeah.
just the length of time, like this, like the school board does. The school board.
Whoever it is, that there would have to be a reason
Right.
Cost.
to let them go,
Well, this is.
for at least that 3-year window.
Because-
Yeah. I would
It's
suggest
on
that for
So
example,
you-
the board offers the, for example, 3-year contracts, but it still retains at will. But the offer is, and the signature is for 3. But
Yeah.
I don't know if you can.
So you're asking whatever we decide on the person, that they commit to 3 years, is that what you're saying?
Minimum.
Minimum of 3 years, okay.
We don't want a short
Hopefully
term.
longer, but I don't want to see something happen before
Right.
then.
Okay.
Sorry, I
Keep
had
going.
found it. It was in a different section, but all administrative, and this is in section 3.9, all administrative officers of the city, except the city manager and attorney, shall be appointed by the city manager for an indefinite period, subject to confirmation by the council. Here. The city manager and attorney shall be appointed by the council for an indefinite period, shall be responsible to and serve at the pleasure of the council, and the council shall fix the compensation of those officers. And that is in section 3.9. So because of that, it is an indefinite period of time, so that would preclude a specific term in a contract.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean, it doesn't have to be in the contract, but we could talk about that with that.
Or the intention.
Yeah, the intention. Councilman Eisenbacher?
Again, talking in terms of interests, in the past, we've had these contracts where you get a 6-month severance, and it's all, and it applies somewhat of a cushion. And if you really want a level of performance, there has to be a level of risk. As soon as your job gets so cushy that you don't have accountability, you don't have any risk of the council being upset with you, you don't have to be as high a performer. And I'm not talking in terms of any person, I'm just talking in general. I think that the more the interest I'm hearing is that we don't want to offer like the lifetime 6-month benefit. We're saying like we want a person to be stable for 3 years, and then after those 3 years, you're at risk.
That's interesting.
So, I mean, usually we have a contract where it says, okay, if we fire you for no reason at all, you get 6 months of severance. Basically what we'd be saying is, we're giving you 3 years with a very good severance. We expect you to be performing during those years and be doing a good job. But you're going to be expected to continue in high performance for the long period, not getting a cushy job.
So the severance drops after 3 years? Interesting.
Mayor Tim Howard, next.
I know for none of these candidates would I be interested in that because, I think that, I'm not, what we've done, what we did with Mr. Nelson and what we had with John Zerlag when he was here before, and I think with Jim Bacon before that, was simply the at will with the differentiation between for cause and dismissal and without cause. And I think that served us well. And it does give a new person a certain amount of security. If you go down a different road with John Zerlag again, that might be a different issue because of a whole host of things.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I don't know that we can tie future council's hands on something, remember that.
It seems the intent of the charter is not to do that.
Right, yeah.
I think the conversation's
But I
important.
think the conversation
is important.
I think the intent of this council
Councilman Fleming?
the intent of this council is whoever we choose tonight, this is not a short-term appointment, and that word, I think,
Not
came out
Tombstone.
of Councilman Kerwin's mouth, if I understood correctly, for this time, at this time. This time, for me, is multiple years. We're not talking 6 months, 1 year, 2. We're talking multiple years here, not a short-term solution.
Right.
And so we're thinking about these candidates, we're thinking about long-term, not short-term at all. And so we want to choose someone that's not filling a gap. We've had Mr. Zerlag do a great job filling the gap here for a period of months, and I agree he's done a great job. But we're talking going forward, longer term. And when I'm speaking about Mr. Zerlag as well, I've had the privilege of serving with him a short time at the council at the beginning, and now he left, and he's come back as an interim, of course. From my perspective, I see, in many respects, a new John Zerlag. He has really stepped up in this short period of time and accomplished quite a bit. I'm really surprised, and you know, compliment him on that. In the short period of time that he's been here, he stepped in and done a tremendous job and really helped us through some difficult situations, contract negotiations and so forth. And my hat's off to him for that. I think he's done a great job. So I understand that you got his name in there. I could do that.
You know, you mentioned the contract negotiations. He did a good job on that when he was here before, but he'll be the first one to tell you that he learned a few things.
Well, sure.
When he was gone from here for 3 years.
He did.
And so I think that, you know, it's helpful to have discussions about things, and it was helpful to look at candidates, but when we started down this road of looking for candidates, he wasn't even available. So, you know, sometimes fate has a way of, you know, intervening. Circumstances change along the way, and you need to look at, I think it was Robin that said, you know, we need to be looking at what's best for the total community on the kinds of things that we're going to deal with over a period of years.
We certainly still have a good candidate here, in my opinion. Mr. Gabe, we're still out there with 4 people, and my name's there, and I haven't taken it off.
I just replaced your second choice.
I replaced my, no, actually, honestly, I replaced my first choice. But he still gave it, I think they're level, they're even.
You know what?
But I'm,
But I echo.
Wait, Councilwoman Curley, we're gonna, because we're on TV, we should go by the.
I just want to respond.
Okay,
May
go
I
ahead.
respond to him, though?
Yes, go ahead. But
I think that Councilmember Beltramini did say there might be a place and there might be a time.
I absolutely believe that. And I think there's a place
Yes.
for John Gaber here.
Yeah. Did you hear that, Mr. Gaber?
It's not at the
So,
top.
yeah, I just, yeah.
well, why is it there a place for Mr. Alt here then? Good job, too.
Mayor?
probably for the same reason. Mayor Pro Tem Howard?
Okay,
Well, I truly believe it's time to fish or cut bait. I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to move the resolution to resolve that the Troy City Council hereby appoints John Gaber as the city manager contingent upon background checks and contract language with the first day of employment commencing July 28, 2009. And I would be amenable to amending it to include a second choice, which I think would be appropriate. I'm going to go through all 5 because I really think we need to get this thing moving. You know, if there's no second, then I'm going to move for Jane Bias DeSassa. But no, we can talk this until we get blue on the face. But I'm going to make no bones about this. This is not the appropriate time to be discussing somebody who wasn't part of the process. And John Zerlag was very much able to apply. He decided not to. Both our assistant city managers were able to apply. And quite frankly, if you guys had wanted to not go through with this, then you could have saved us all a lot of time by not even going through with it in the first place. I mean, we all have the ability to express our opinion. I'm just exceptionally frustrated that you guys asked me to put this time in, and we're not even going. And we've said nice things about all 5 candidates. We decided not to say bad things, but there are a lot of nice things to say, a lot about each of these candidates, and they're definitely good choices there. I just think that we need to make a decision.
I do remember sitting at the meeting as we were going through this in here, and it was said out loud that if the process found that our own people were more qualified, that we would go to our own people. At this time, I think it's apparent that John Zerlag has those abilities we need right now. He is more qualified on the face of it lining up with his experience and his ability not only to look at consolidating some services, building that cohesive team, and changing the way we're doing financial business. And I think that we need to get started stepping that way.
Yeah.
No,
that's not, we haven't been playing by these ground rules. As a matter of fact, when we came out with 5 candidates, we had the ability to bring one of those 3 individuals out as well. We didn't. And what I would suggest, if you don't like these candidates, to do what Grand Rapids did and ask Ms. Sims to go back and grab us another group. I mean, we've spent a lot of money on this, quite frankly. And go ahead, tell somebody they got laid off that we spent $20,000 on a search process and didn't expect to play by those ground rules. It's completely wasted money is what it is.
Councilman Plummer?
Yeah. I think we had to go through this process. And I appreciate what you're saying, Councilman Howard, but I don't think it's wasted money. I think we got 5 good candidates. You have to know what's out there. We had to. There was no other way to know than do this search. And yes, $20,000 plus travel expenses and so forth is a lot of money. But put it in perspective as to what the right city manager can do to manage his city and how quickly that comes back, it's really insignificant, I think. But we had to go through the process, and I don't regret it one bit going through the process. And we may end up with Mr. Gaber. I don't know. You haven't got a second yet. I'm pondering it. But I think it was good value. It was the right process. I don't regret going through it. And I think we got good candidates as a result. And I've quite frankly learned a lot about what was out there and what's not out there. And I wouldn't have known that otherwise without going through this process. But I value what you say as well. But I don't think it was a waste, and I think we owed it to the citizens of this community to look for the absolute very best. And quite frankly, I was looking for someone that wowed me, that had the wow factor, that was, this is it, Eureka, I found it. And we got good people. But I have no one that just jumps out to me and says, this is Eureka, I found it. Let's look no further. The mere fact that we're sitting here talking about 5 people and the votes are spread among them tells us we had a good pool of candidates, and I don't think it was a waste. Now, granted, this putting John Zerlag in there, and always in the back of my mind, from day one, I've been thinking in the back of my mind, not said it publicly, but thinking, what criteria do I use to measure this person by? The only criteria I have to use to measure the next city manager by really has been Mr. Nelson and Mr. Zerlag. Okay, and that's the benchmarks that I've had. And so when I sit back and look at these, now I'm trying to put myself in that position and say, we have a known here with Mr. Zerlag. We have 5 good candidates, 2 of which I felt very strongly about, but are totally different. They have they bring different things to the party. But at this point, really, what do we need to hit the ground running? And I do believe, as I said before, Mr. Zerlag has learned a lot you come back, I think, a different and better manager than when he left. Can these other people do it? Can Mr. Alt do it? Mr. Gabriel do it? Absolutely. But what's the best for us right now, this moment? We wouldn't have known what was out there had not gone through the search. Okay, that's more talking than I normally ever do, Mark. But I appreciate your position. I know that you're sensitive to what we spend here on this council, and I am too, because it's tough times. We don't need to be wasting anybody's money. But I take except I don't think we wasted it. And that's a matter of opinion.
Councilman Eisbacher, I see you signaling.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm the one who had made the statements that Councilwoman Kerwin referred to, and the reason I made those statements is because if there's any job that we have as a council, it's to make sure we have the best city manager and city attorney possible to run the city, because we don't run the city. And if you don't look, you don't know if the people inside are the best or not. I mean, you've got to consider your options. This process of looking was us considering from a multitude of people, who do we think can be the best person? We each had our vote for, within the 5, who is our best person. I have one concern about Mr. Zerlag, and that's the managing the conflict between his entrepreneurial activities and his city manager job. And whoever we have as city manager and as city's attorney, you got to be 100% for Troy.
Well, and that
We have
can
to
be
have-
worked in a contract.
Right, and we have to understand that Troy is number one. I think that the consulting job will bring in very valuable experience because he'll be looking at other communities for that job. And the more you are seeing what other communities do well, the more good ideas you can bring back. I mean, that's one of the values of Councilwoman Beltramini being involved so heavily with Michigan Municipal League. Lots of good ideas. So there is a value, we just need to structure the contract so that Troy's number one.
Councilwoman Broomfield?
Well, it's obviously no secret that I supported Mr. Zerlag because I was the one that kept bringing forward his name for acting city manager. And I did it because I thought he could do a good job. I think he was approached to apply and chose not to, and, you know, I understand why. I probably just didn't want to be among a bunch of other people, and gosh, we got voted down that. But I wanted to do the search as well, just like Councilman Clinton. I wanted to see what's out there. Frankly, the last time we went through this, I publicly shared my disappointment to the group, to the pool that we worked with, and but as it turned out, it worked out. You know, we had 3 years with Mr. Nelson. We learned from him and he from us. But I really wanted to see if somebody rose to the top, like the phone, somebody, the wow, somebody takes it to the top. And again, I can't. We talked good things about all 5 candidates, and we could probably go down the list and talk negative too. And I'm glad that we didn't do that. I'm so glad we didn't do that, because each one brings something to the table. When you throw out Zerlag's name, though, you know, he's always been in the back of my mind. He always has, because I wouldn't have pushed him to be acting city manager if I didn't think he could do the job. And I've had the pleasure of working with John for a term and a half. And so, no, I don't think it was a waste of money. I didn't have my mind made up with somebody that wasn't even applying. And I wanted to see what was out there. And I'm a little unconventional. I do like Gaber and Alt. I wish that Alt had some experience in city management because I really think he could do a lot in the city. I was very impressed with him. I was pleasantly surprised because I wasn't sure that we were going to, that picking him as one of the top 5, if that was such a good choice, but I wanted to step out of the box and do that, and I was pleasantly surprised with him. But I have to admit, I am concerned. I'm conservative enough to know that you need some experience at some level. And so, right along with Councilman Fleming, I feel very good about going through this process.
Councilman Beltrame?
I haven't spoken about the processor since John Zerlak's name has entered the mix, and I've made no secret my choice would be Lamarado. I've made no secret about that, but I believe that when I lost that battle earlier, that this is what we needed to do. I agree with you there, absolutely, because to even think about treating this community as in a better the devil you know fashion
Right.
is a disservice to each other and to the community.
Better the devil you know.
That's better you know.
Yeah. So to have just appointed John Lamorato and Brian Murphy, A.J. Zerlak, to that position without this search would not have told us what was out there. And I didn't disagree, and I still don't, with the necessary experience in the private sector. I absolutely think in today's economy and with the business center that we have to salvage. And at this point, that is how I look at it. We have to salvage that. That experience is very important. I love the urgency and the let's get the job done kind of thing. I continue to say with John Gaber, my concern is at the head, and get the job done, and he doesn't know exactly what the job is, so that bothers me a lot. I don't like taking a consensus candidate from outside the process, particularly when there were members of this council that did not support the process originally to begin with. I think that doesn't give us a really good reputation. But like Wade and Christina, I was looking for a wow somewhere. And and quite honestly, that's why my choice was the 2 women. They had a modicum of experience and all the credentials that they needed and more enthusiasm than any of the guys. So that was as close to wow as I got. If Zerlak and or Lamorato are going to be put on the table, they're better qualified, or at least have more of the kind of, and I agree with you, Wade. John Zerlak has come back a different and in many ways better city manager than he was when he left. That no city manager is ever going to be perfect.
No.
And we're all going to have issues with any of them. But if that's the consensus candidate for this point, I think he's far better than John Gaber. So that's where I am with that.
I'd like to have them both.
Yeah, I really would. I mean,
You do have a good point about, and Councilman Howrelak has a good point about the process. I mean, the process was very important. I do have a hard time rectifying a motion outside of the process with the time and effort, and I think the good people we had. I'll walk around the building once.
yeah.
Think.
I mean, and I would go for a 10-minute break to just kind of all of us collect our thoughts. Could we do that?
Yes,
Is that okay?
sure. You know me, I'm on.
No, I mean, but I really think just collect our thoughts.
Okay, 5 minutes again, or you need 10?
Just 7.
Yeah. Okay, we took a 10-minute break so people could cogitate on what we've talked about. And we're back.
We need another resolution, don't we?
Yes?
Mayor?
Pardon?
Oh, I wanted to, if I could.
Oh, yes.
Just wanted to ask
Representative Howard?
Andrea Sims if this happens often, where you go through the process and then somebody else completely out of the picture gets plugged in.
No, as I mentioned when I interviewed with you all via telephone, typically if they're internal people, they go through the process. So this is atypical for people not to go through the process.
Oh, so.
My follow-up to council is that, make sure that, if you want Lambrado, then put him there. If you want Murphy, then put him there. Or if you want Zerlag, figure out who you want, and then don't just pick Zerlag because he's there now.
Oh.
I think that it was
Councilwoman Kerwin?
it was a good intuitive choice. I think Christina Broomfield had it right when she thought that this time this would work. And I think going forward, as I said, I had no connection with that, but putting Zerlag in the position has worked.
I've served with different city councils and 4 different city managers, and done the interview process, and so I've had a chance to look at it from a perspective, and so I try to bring that all with me in the decision, and that's why I went the route that I did. Even though I was opposed to doing a search process, I think it's been beneficial for this council, and it gave us good information, gives a chance to do some comparisons, and so I think that's good. I also think that it's good when we can sit down like this at the table and have a discussion, and of course when it's on one subject matter for the evening, it's a lot easier. We're at the council table, we've got all these different things we're dealing with. But this is our most important job, the city manager selection and the budget. They really are the most important things.
Budget comes from the manager a lot.
Yeah.
I'm her.
Yeah, well, I'm not reading L'Oreal, I'm sorry.
Enforcement. That's her enforcer.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I do think that that's crucial, just as it's crucial that we have a good city attorney too, and I've been in on that process too, several times. And so I think that it's just helpful for me to have that perspective. Councilman Fleming?
Having 10 minutes to think about it. And actually more than 10 minutes, because this has been on my mind for some time, and as I said, thinking about comparing Mr. Zerlag to the other candidates. I'm prepared to move that this council appoint John Zerlag as our next city manager, contingent upon satisfactory contract being negotiated.
Moved by Councilman Fleming, seconded by Councilwoman Kerwin. Resolved that the Tri-City Council hereby appoints John Zerlag, which actually is John Zerlag, because it's Anthony John Zerlag, as city manager contingent upon negotiations of a contract language and the first day of employment commencing on July 28th.
Mayor?
Right? Or do we have to change that?
As I heard the resolution,
Satisfactory?
that the
Right.
Troy City Council hereby appoints John Zerlag as City manager contingent upon satisfactory contract language being negotiated.
Right, okay, that's fine.
Mayor?
Yes. Discussion.
Mayor?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Carroll.
It seems to me that the only thing that would be fair would be to have Mr. Zerlich, and that's fine, you've got your resolution there, but I think that the thing that would be fair would be to have him submit the same set of documents to council prior to awarding a final agreement to him that the rest of the candidates did, because the only one at this table who, I think you were here, Mayor, when he was hired the first time, but the six of us weren't. And we have a lot of information on these six candidates from which to draw a conclusion. I don't think we need to interview them, but I do think for because we essentially do that at every meeting. But I think in order to, if you really truly want to be able to measure him up against these individuals, then I would suggest comparing it with the same information. We already have a de facto interview. We have his resume already. It's simply a matter of having him answer these questions and submitting to the self-assessment. I think that would be helpful for those of you who truly believe that we are indeed comparing him to the rest of these people, because otherwise you're not.
What, Rita?
Yeah. Councilman Howard has a good point.
Well,
Good one. Okay. What else is there?
there's two,
I need one for the
yeah,
official
there's
record.
2 pages. There's a single one, and there's the stapled one here, so I'm gonna send them around like that. Confused here. There, okay, there you go. Those go over there, I gotta keep going.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes, Councilman Inspector?
Thank you. I believe Councilman Harlock has a good point in terms of we should be looking the same. It also occurs to me that the prior discussion we had about a primary and a secondary, I see a different twist when we throw in an existing person. And I haven't rectified in my mind how it would be to our advantage or disadvantage, and how it's different. Part of it is because I also don't understand the legal ramifications of the fact that John is a retiree of the city. Is that?
I have not had an opportunity to do any research on that at all. I'm assuming, however, that he would forego his pension, defer his pension if that's if he chooses to accept the position. I'm assuming that he has thought about that and would defer his pension until such time as he retires. But I have not done the research on that.
Okay. And also, in light of our budget, I'm trying to remember the numbers and negotiation.
Are you talking about the present contract, the present
Yes.
salary?
Present salary, past salary.
But that would all be negotiated.
Yeah, that's another step.
That's another step, and we don't do that, we don't do that here.
It's just the
We're
offer.
looking for the best person.
It's just the offer.
I still can't get away from, we're really messing up the process. I mean, I expected to come in this evening and pick from the 5. And if we don't, we don't want to embarrass anyone by picking a backup from the 5 and then giving the job to John. It isn't as smooth as it should be.
Councilwoman Grimfield?
This council typically doesn't move the smoothest most. We're making assumptions here that Mr. Zerlich will take the position after the negotiations. There's been no negotiations. I mean, the idea is, okay, maybe he does and he's interested and all of that, but now you got to sit down and negotiate a contract, and that may not be something that works true. So, you know, I think we ought to move ahead and vote, and if the vote is unanimous, is the majority, make the offer, look at the negotiations, see if that works. It may not work, and have to come back to us. I know there's a time limit, but I also know that there's possible ways to, he extends his position until we come back to these, but I don't want to muddy the waters anymore.
Okay, so is there any other discussion on this? Mayor Pro Tem Harley?
Yes, there is. I spoke to John today about this issue, and it was tangential to other issues we were discussing, because I think that, for the record, I think he's done a great job in the interim. You folks know why I don't like the way this is going, and it's a process issue. And also because I think there are other people that are perfectly capable of going forward. I do think that there are legitimate concerns about, and I think that council needs to start addressing them this evening, because he does plan to continue to consult, and so you need to figure out where those lines of distinction are. And I will tell you, from my perspective, at the very least, I would say you have to have a limitation that it's outside the Tri-County metropolitan area, Wayne, Oakland, and Macomb. For me, I think it should be outside of Michigan. I think there are just way, way too many conflicts of interest. But at the very least, outside of the Tri-County area. And there are plenty of opportunities to consult in Michigan outside of these three counties.
And that would be part of the negotiations too, because I think we've talked with him about that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
if I may build on that a little.
Councilman Eichenbacher?
It's the conflict of interest between income for him or his company and acting in the best interest of the city. And I don't want to give up those opportunities for collaboration with the surrounding communities.
Right.
But I don't want to get the city in any sort of a bad situation.
Right.
I mean, that's my interest. I don't know if that is aligning, Councilman Howard, or are you drawing a much stricter line?
If I may, Mayor.
Councilman Harley?
Thank you. Mike, there's also the issue of what about the things that he would do in his normal capacity as city manager? And, how in the world do you ensure, John's an honest man, but how do you ensure that what he's doing in his official capacity, where's the line drawn? Because Troy, one of the discussions that we had today, John Zerlag and I, was about the future of the city and the need to basically, everybody knows we've got this huge issue of revenues and expenses not matching up and getting worse every year in the future. So one of the obvious solutions to that, and he's expressed it, is to combine, to regionalize, et cetera, to continue to deliver the same level of services to Troy, while collaborating with neighboring communities or even communities that aren't necessarily directly adjoining us. And in that process, you may be looking at 10 or 12 communities, of which Troy would be one. And how do you draw the distinction? And I think those are very valid concerns, because we're public officials, and I can assure you, we all know that things that we do are under the microscope. And its perception doesn't leave us doubts John Zerlag's honesty and integrity.
Councilwoman Beltrame?
My thought on that is clear and stark. Any collaborative efforts that would involve the city of Troy, and if he's sitting city manager, that's his Troy job, and he should get nothing from that.
Right.
I'm right there.
Are we on both sides of the deal?
Yeah, both
Okay.
sides of the deal. That's how I feel about that. Is if we want a city manager who will bring innovative collaborative ideas, and that's part of the job description, why are we going to let somebody else pay him to take their interests at equal value with ours? Because as far as I'm concerned, ours should always be bigger.
I think it's very easy to say that with his paycheck, but it would be the involvement of the company too.
That would have to be clarified.
Yeah.
At the-
And that has
that's
to
something
be-
that
And there are plenty of legal ways to do that, too.
Yeah.
And we talked about
Yeah.
that during these months.
I mean, those of us who
And that
work
was
for the
clear during
federal
these
government
months.
know there are ways to do that. So,
Okay.
Should be part of the
Any other,
contract.
any other part you want to discuss on this? I
Yeah.
think that conversation we have to have, I think, absolutely.
Well, I would like
Councilman?
clarity as to when that conversation is going to occur and who is going to do those negotiations.
Okay.
Mayor, it would be
Council
possible
Brookville?
for that conversation to occur with the full council and clarification so that when the negotiations of the contract are brought forward, that the expectations are in those negotiations. So, and the expectations or the direction comes from the council.
Yeah, I think it's important for everybody to be
Well,
involved
to
with that,
outline
because this is,
some of these
again,
issues,
different.
yes.
Well, usually
Yes.
we have to negotiate in open session if it's the whole council, though.
It would have to be done in an open
Right.
session,
Yeah.
yes. And certainly you could do it
Right.
after the next council meeting if
Yeah.
that's your choice, but it's cutting it very close if you don't reach agreement
Right.
to the 120 days, which is allowable under the charter. And then you have to fill it within that 120 days. We'll work it out.
Meet after on that next meeting.
If I
Go
may
ahead,
propose
yeah.
also, I know that Craig Lang had tried to negotiate the contract with Mr. Zerlag on the interim basis. It would be my proposal to bring him in and to, if that's the choice of council and if that's where you're going, it would be my choice to, my recommendation to have him brought into that meeting as well.
Yeah, because he is the expert in that area, and we've used him previously.
Better anyway.
Yeah. All right, Councilman Beltran?
I am concerned about that. I mean, that's a big deal. And that's not all of it, I'm sure. That is a very big deal. I would like to kind of get our issues out on the table tonight so that Ms. Bloom could contact Craig Lang to start this ball rolling.
Okay. Do you
So
want to have,
that we know where we sit on the 20th.
do you want to have a vote on this and then do that?
Well, Martin wanted some other things.
Pardon? Oh, I'm
Well,
sorry.
what I wanted to know
Councilman
from council was, one of the reasons why the assistant city managers were not considered was because we were going to go through that process. And I don't know, I just think this thing's got a life of its own. I have no idea how we got here and why we're here. And my understanding was that the assistant city managers were blocked in the first place because we wanted to go through this process. And so I just want to know, I'm not a part of this. I'm just kind of being dragged along by the rest of you. And that's fine. John's a good guy. But I just want to know why we're going down this route. That's all.
Well, some of us expressed the fact that we looked at all the candidates that were brought forward, and then we decided, then we narrowed it down to 5. We looked at those 5, and then we compared those 5 to people that we already know, people that are here in the city, and came to the realization that for this time and place, this is what will work for us. Christina? Councilman Brito?
If I recall, and my memory isn't always the best, but the last time we went through this selection process, we did make it, what do I want to say, mandatory, that if anybody in-house wanted to apply, that they would go through the process. That was very specific, because you remember talking with John Lombardo about that. We discussed it this time, but did not make it mandatory. As a matter of fact, even in the interviews with the different companies, we did bring up about in-house, and the company said, well, they'd have to go through our process.
We didn't say they had to go through our process. Number one, just to clarify, we did not say.
Right.
Well, I understand that, but we did not say they had to like we did last time. There was a piece of discussion in our business meeting about that. There was absolutely, maybe you weren't on the phone, Andrea, but we talked about it, that they didn't have to, if they didn't want to. They could, but they didn't have to. That was not something that was a requirement to be considered. If my memory serves me, correct me if I'm wrong. This second time around, we did not make it a requirement.
Could I just clarify my question?
Yes. Yes.
If I might, actually, that's not even what I want. I just wanted to know, I'm going back to when the decision was made to not select John Lamarato or Brian Murphy as the interim city manager. I think one of the decisions was we were going down this road of this process of finding a candidate, and I do differ with your perception of how internal candidates. I have it as an unresolved issue on my notes, which is often what happens with things on this council. But my only question is, if we're going to choose an internal candidate because we have better believe, 6 of you believe that we have better internal candidates than these 5, or even the other 37. Where do Brian and John Lamarato fit into this, and are they being considered? Is this something that in your minds you have ruled out? That's all I want to know.
Councilman Fleming?
You look at the qualifications and the experience. And again, yours is city manager. He's the most qualified. He's more qualified than John Lamarato, more qualified than Brian Murphy. So that's why I would say, yes, they're not being considered at this point, because the person we have in there as interim acting city manager is more qualified than either. In my mind, that's the way I justify it.
Councilwoman Beltramini?
I'll speak to Martin's question. John Lamarato, I like a change. I think a change would be good for us. And John Lamarato, I think, could do the job. I don't think I could get consensus on this council to do that, quite honestly.
Consensus being, I'm presuming 6, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, 6.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think anybody should take the job of the city manager with a $158 million budget on 4 votes. I mean, I wonder about the responsibility of anybody doing that. But I have a different recollection than Christine on the phone call, because what Andrea said was she expected people to go through the process and would not be responsible if they did not.
Right.
They would still expect to be paid.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, why didn't,
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I mean, that's,
You expect to be paid, you
Oh,
should.
yeah.
we'll be paid. We don't have anything to do with the guarantee, but,
Yeah.
that's your decision.
Right. You want to have further discussion on the resolution?
Just a follow-up. I mean, clearly Brian and John don't have the potential or perceived conflicts that John Zerbeck has, so that's all I wanted to add.
Councilman Kerwin, did you want to, ready for the vote?
Call for the vote.
Okay, you want to call the,
Yes, Councilwoman Beltramini.
Yes.
Councilwoman Broomfield.
Yes.
Councilman Eisenbacher.
Yes.
Councilman Fleming.
Yes.
Councilman Howerlack.
Absolutely none.
Councilwoman Kerwin.
Yes.
Mayor Schilling.
yes? Motion passes. Now, Councilwoman Beltramini, you said that we should talk now about what we expect in the negotiations. And I have a question for all of us about Mrs. Sims. She has a plane. Does she need to stay for this? I don't
Are you
think
trying
so.
to torture her?
No, I'm just following protocol here.
Madam Mayor?
Yes. But we ought to
Say
say.
thank you,
yes.
and you should be
Thank
paid
you.
everything you have coming.
Thank you. Thank
Good
you.
luck to everyone.
Thank you. I enjoyed meeting you, chatting with you, and thank you for.
Thank you. You did a good job.
Thank you.
Good job, thank you.
I'll just follow those. I'm not ready to give you my own for some stuff.
Well, and we may, if I can't negotiate, are we adjourned?
No, we're still working. Still working. We're not adjourned. We're still going, because we want to talk about negotiations. Okay. Folks, Andrea, we have to go on with the meeting, and they're still televising, so.
David can go.
Okay, thank you. Okay, who wants to go first with their things? So, Robin, you had some things right away?
Well, I said, you know, any contract that would involve the city of Troy, I would expect that that would be done as John as city manager, and he would not see the results of that in any way, other than through his city manager's salary. And I don't know if council wants to talk about it, could defer that to a trust or whatever, but I absolutely believe that we're gonna pay him a salary, and he ought to be able to live on that, and that's where his interest ought to lie. Right.
Mayor?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Howard?
One of the problems is I specifically asked him on the telephone, and this was a couple months ago, I must admit. Actually, it wasn't that long ago. I think it was when I asked him, oh, heck, I can't remember when it was, but it was sometime between when he started here and now. The reason why he wasn't certain about, at least initially, about being appointed permanent was he told me, and this may have changed, I mean, obviously, he has the right to change his mind, that he didn't want to give up his pension. And what I heard Ms. Bloom say is that he might have to.
Okay.
So we do need to find an answer to that. We need to see if that's a major thing for Mr. Zerler.
I think it's deferred, is what she said.
Well, he's obviously not giving up, but I mean, it's giving up the reception of it until he leaves here.
And it seems to me somewhere I remember that happened in another city or area where somebody left and they came back and there was like that pension thing involved. But it was worked out. I mean, obviously can't be getting both. Councilman Eisenbacher?
I have a concern about a straight salary, considering that he will be doing the consulting job.
Being
Hourly or daily, prorated, I mean, because I don't want to get in a situation where all we do is count hours.
Right.
Because a city manager job is more than a 40-hour week job.
It's an executive level position exempt from those statutes.
If it was hourly, not to exceed 40 hours.
No.
That still doesn't work because a council meeting is 7 hours often, 6 hours.
Right.
No, in other words, you'd have to pay for it.
And I don't know what labor, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, I'm an
Yeah,
engineer.
that's something Craig.
We have to work it out so that it's equitable, that when he's away from the office, here's the interest, away from the office is not compensated by the city, it's compensated by his firm. And that would apply to like a lot of the training things, depending on the hat.
Councilman Beltrame?
Could we build just more days off into that contract instead of, I mean, it's our call what we offer, and I want to be equitable with other people, but keep in mind, if we are going to shorten the days and weeks that he is expected to be here, we are also going to shorten his salary.
Give him more time off, pay him a little bit
And
less.
that's what I'm
I like
thinking.
that idea.
If you build more, you know, you give him X number of days a month or something like that.
Like, well,
that
That's-
might be.
That's the scenario with a lot of the auto industry right now.
They must have some idea.
Well,
what
the
they
other
want.
thing is, we don't know how much time it's gonna take for him to do these other things. I mean, and
Well, that's good.
that's gonna work, you know. May find out that he wants to do this, but he can't do it right now, kind of thing, you know. It might be a year off.
More scale.
Yeah, and that's why we need to talk with him on it. I mean, but it's good that we're having the discussion, so we can, you know, bring some things out. But we really need to have the discussion with him and
Right.
with Craig Lang being here to get things, you know, kind of worked out.
And we can't have a session without,
No,
It has to be public.
yeah, but those
It can
are
be
the
public,
issues.
Yeah, these are issues we want to have ready to discuss.
Or to forward to both of them.
Mhm.
So they may in fact have responses back to us
Right,
on the paper that comes to us
right.
for study.
And the other thing that ties into what you were saying is, John Zerlag has said that City Hall is not the buzz and the hive of activity that it has been in the past during the boom years.
Right.
So even if he's not busy, it may be advantageous for us to have a contract that takes advantage of less busy. But I don't know how that ties into business retention and growth, because that's
so important
I think he's been busy every
to work harder now
minute that
because
he's
of
been
this.
here. You know, and look at how many contracts he
Oh, yeah.
negotiated, okay? And look at all the things that we asked him to do. And he gave us organizational reports and,
And
you
met
know,
with
so
each of us.
I think he's been busy.
Yeah.
Mayor?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I just,
yes.
was this a point, I'm not sure I get what the point is, since I'm going to be communicating it to both. I
Oh.
need to make sure I understand it.
You just tied into the days per week and days off.
Okay,
that-
so it's not a separate point, it's
No.
the days per week and the amount of compensation and whether or not that can be adjusted and negotiated.
Mayor,
Councilman Beltrame?
I know we're all tired and we're done, however, and I'm not reconsidering this decision, but it is something that we all need to think about. As you say, yes, John Zerlag's done a good job as acting, and yes, he's the consensus candidate, and yes, we want him, and yes, this is a good thing. Listen to us. We're saying, yeah, but it's not a 24/7 job anymore, so let's give him more time off, or let's let
Yeah,
him go do
let's
this
No,
other
I didn't
stuff.
say any of that. I didn't say
but
any of
that
that.
is the
No, some of you
perception.
said
Not
that.
mine. That is
Some
the
of us didn't
perception.
say that at all, Robin.
Be very
So-
careful about that.
Yeah.
Some of us didn't say that at all.
Excuse me, because I take exception to the whole thing, and I'll tell you why. When my conversation with him when he came, I had a serious concern regarding conflict of interest, regarding the consulting company. When I spoke with him individually, he said initially he came in, short-term, do this. As he began to work and enjoyed it and re-sparked, he gave it all. That idea of I want to receive growth through my consulting went way off to the side. And during this time of moving forward, this is what he has been doing. My hope would be that would be what he would be doing going forward now.
No,
Now, that's something to be addressed.
He told me 6 hours ago that he wanted to
Yes.
consult.
We're
But we
speculating
don't know
here.
the scope, we don't know the detail,
This-
of
this
the
is
scope,
just
the
good.
expanse of this.
Excuse me, this is good discussion. We should not be having this discussion without John. I mean, we're talking about him like he's a million miles away.
Right.
I think
He can
that's
bring a lot of value to it,
Yeah,
and
I think
we're
you have
speculating,
enough.
and one person hears one thing, one's another. We can get him in the room and do this finalization, because this is just a waste of
See,
good
that's,
bread.
well, they've done the
That was
talking.
my
Inefficient.
point, that was my point about John Toronto.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
that's why we ought to have them in here with us, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Mayor,
Right,
just
yeah.
for clarification then, do you want Craig and John to negotiate and to have a draft contract by the 20th, the meeting of the 20th? Or do you want to have them come here and meet with you in an open session, a study session after the meeting on the 20th?
Well, if they draft something, then we at least have something to look at of what his expectations are, and then we can change it, add or delete. If we have nothing, we just
So you
start
say
out with
draft
everybody.
plus study session.
Yes, yes.
I think we need a special session because of the time sensitivity of this issue.
Okay, we can have a special session, which was on my mind too, except that we have some people leaving out of town. We need to know everybody's schedule.
Or you could meet before, and then you have the whole meeting, and then Craig can get us a document, and then you
Maybe
adopt.
before the meeting?
Huh?
We could meet
Before the
one on
next
one.
meeting.
Well, I just meant like we could meet, at 5 or whatever with John and Craig. 5, 6, whatever,
We
you
could
know.
meet one-on-one to clarify issues that we have individually.
No, we need to do it, I thought we
I'm
needed to
not
do it
comfortable
together.
with
No.
one-on-one, there's so many mixed signals.
Right.
You're right.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes,
I'm sure Mr. Zerlag is looking at this meeting.
I don't know
And
if
if
he
he
is.
is or not, I don't know if he is or
Probably
not,
not.
but if not, he has the capability of doing it. Mr. Lang has capability of doing it. He's seen these things aired. I would like to see them put together a contract based on the discussion we've had tonight. There may be other things, but it's certainly a starting document.
Right.
And we have that at our next meeting and study, when we have the meeting to finalize it. Or
And it'll be a study session.
It'll be a study session after the meeting. Is that what we want?
Yes.
But have that contract, something in writing, based on the dialogue we've had here tonight. It's pretty obvious. And there may be other things too, Martin, that we need to bring out. But
Right.
at least, this is a good starting point right now.
well, that's why I said that
Do
they
it.
should do the draft, because then we at least have something to look at, and then we, rather than starting
Or schedule a
open.
study session after,
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
we can talk
I
about it.
agree. I don't like this one-on-one meeting with him because.
Oh, no, I think this is something we have to do all
It's
together.
chaos.
And
Okay.
Mayor, I would just also offer, if there are other concerns or
Yes.
issues, if you would forward them to me as soon as they come, I'm happy to convey those as well, and hopefully we could
I'll have a big long list.
get those incorporated before
We'll make it
before
start
the
right.
day.
Okay.
Okay.
He'll be writing lists at his sister's wedding,
So, July 20th
That's good.
is our next
July
meeting?
20th is the next
Right.
meeting.
July 20th. Okay.
Should we have a motion to
Have a study
hold our,
session.
or what's our, hold our
Hold our
rules?
Suspend the rules?
Suspend our rules.
We,
And then make.
is, the intent is to vote on the contract afterwards?
No, just to set a special meeting.
No, we're
Oh,
having a
that'll be-
study session.
No, that's,
We have a timeline
We
here.
don't know if we're gonna have a special meeting yet.
Do I need a meeting notice to have a study session with all 7 of us?
if
No.
it's,
If
if
before,
it's,
it's on
if
the
it's before,
agenda.
you will. If it's after, as part of the regular agenda, then no, you will not. And that was what I understood, is it was part of the regular agenda
Yeah.
afterwards, but then you won't,
I have a question.
do you want to, are you going to be voting on it?
Yeah, that was my question. If we have a draft and it's in our material and we have time to read it, we have a meeting, we have a study session that goes over the draft, we don't vote at study sessions.
We
Right.
could suspend the rules and come back and vote, couldn't we?
Have to go back in to
You'd
the
have to go
chamber.
back in.
So if we
have
do
to set
that-
up where we would go back in.
You could, correct me if I'm wrong, we could do that if we put the contract on the agenda for ratification.
For notice.
And then we adjourn to a study session, tabled it
We-
until, yeah.
And then come back
The,
in.
the goal is to vote on the 20th, and I
Right.
will speak with Ms. Bartholomew, and we will
Okay.
figure out how we can
How to
get
do
this
it.
accomplished, so that
Ma'am,
you can vote
One
on
last
it.
question.
Yes. Christina?
If we're planning on voting on the contract that night, we have a study session and we make some changes and we're writing it at the table, I'm not so sure I'm comfortable with voting. I'd rather have it go back for appropriate language and all of that, and then come back one
Right.
more time, and I don't know if the timeline.
We could leave it open to do that. If we don't wrap it up, then we have another meeting. We
Right.
You can run
postpone.
that by our city clerk and see how that can,
Right.
yourself.
Yeah.
That's where a special study session in advance of the meeting would be helpful.
It would be, yes.
Martin's mentioned meeting first.
Yeah. 'cause
I like that
that
idea,
was-
meeting
yeah,
first.
Yeah, because that way he's right. Then
Mhm.
Craig takes it, types it up, then.
While we're doing it, and then we come back. I think that.
I like it better, study session before if we can.
But you could even do that if there were no public hearings. I can't remember if there are. I think there's an IDD on that meeting.
We also could have a special meeting on a separate day, but I
Oh,
don't know.
that's so hard for everybody.
Makes it
Monday's
hard.
always
I know,
hard
I
to
know.
decide.
I'm just broaching the subject.
We could do it earlier, 5 o'clock or something.
Special study and then add it to the meeting.
5:30 or something on the 20th? What do you think?
I think 5:30.
5:30 runs into work time.
I think, I don't think we need 2 hours. but-
Yeah, let's do
Mark.
6.
Starts at 7:30, that's an hour and a half, 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock study session
Well,
on the
it's an
20th.
hour and
That gives
15
you an
minutes.
hour.
We have to-
I
6 o'clock?
will, we will
Okay.
We will maybe have the mayor call it as a special meeting then, so
Okay.
that we can get the posting done. As long as there's
Okay.
consensus of availability at 6 o'clock on Monday, the 20th, we'll meet and we'll figure out how to
Okay.
accomplish that.
All right. Now, do you want me to call John? Not tonight, I don't know if he's going to call him tonight, or do you want me to call him in the morning? You know, last time you had gave me the job of calling, so.
Well, she's not involved.
I know, I'm just saying.
Whenever you want to.
Yeah, Colin.
Okay. Well, I could really test him out by calling him when I get home, because, or call him on my cell phone right now.
Remember, you were talking about the 24/7 job?
Yeah, okay, I got his number in my phone right here.
Probably watching the meeting and
I know, that's adjourned, I'm not gonna do it
adjourning.
here, because we can't use our phone.
Just a question.
Okay, yes.
I only wanted to know if we wanted to take public comment. I know we had at the
We took
beginning.
public comment at the
My only
beginning.
point was that, well, I guess we can talk individually afterwards. That's
We're not supposed to take it at the end, we took it at the beginning, that's why we had the special, rules. Yes, the meeting's adjourned.
I have a question.